Hello, everyone, and thanks for giving us your time today for VR Download. I'm Ian Hamilton in New York, joined by David Heaney from London in the UploadVR studios as we discuss the next steps in personal computing. We're wearing Quest 3 headsets today with last generation meta avatars. We're using hand tracking. We've got built-in microphones. We've got tablets in front of us that show us notes and comments so we can interact with our audience when we're live. Thank you to our patrons for supporting the work we do over on UploadVR.com. In case this is your first time, you can become a paying member at UploadVR.com to support our work directly. We thank our patrons by name here on this podcast and listed on the website as well. That includes XR Developer News, Podum, the developer of Smash Drums there, Holonet, Mike Monzano, Justin Corcoran at Phosphor Studios, Richard Meller, Parmesan, Qubits, Steve Lucas, David Wyatt. A quick personal note here on those last two names. Steve Lucas is a developer of Jigsaw Night, who I see out there in the comments as well. And David Wyatt is the head of communications at Walkabout Mini Golf. They both became patrons after I talked to them about what we're doing here. And like all our patrons, it means a lot to us to see, that you see what we do and support us in that. There are brilliant engineers and caring artists out there that are making virtual reality more tangible and meaningful every passing day. They're adding new spaces for families and friends to find one another, and more importantly, they're inventing new things for us to do together, even when we're separated geographically. It's a difficult state to be so inspired by your works and to also share in your frustrations of the changing tides of the things that are out of your control. VR is an escape. It's an escape to do what exactly? Our patrons include people who understand just how wide and deep virtual reality is, and we thank you for helping us explore it with you. Hello, everyone in our comments. David, what do we have today?
Yeah, hello everyone. So you'll notice that it is Friday, not Thursday. This week I was at SIGGRAPH 2025 in Vancouver trying two of Meta's research prototypes, Boba 3, a prototype of ultra-wide field of view in a form factor similar to Quest 3, and Tiramisu, a prototype of hyperrealistic VR that combines beyond retinal resolution, high brightness, and high contrast, albeit at a narrow field of view, a very narrow field of view. So at the end of our show, we will be discussing those prototypes and my time with them at SIGGRAPH. Between now and then, we have some other news stories that we're going to run through. Most of them will be fairly quick, but there are some we will want to dive into. So we'll start by talking about two interesting new Quest apps. The first is BeamXR Live, which lets you stream to Twitch or YouTube directly from your Quest without a PC. So it's a multitasking app you bring up. You can live stream to these platforms. You can manage the live chat. You can be a streamer without a PC, or you can stream if you are normally using a PC while you're on the go. We will then talk about Adobe Substance 3D Reviewer, which is a new free Quest app from Adobe that lets you view and annotate 3D models together in VR, as well as having web participants who are outside VR. Then we will talk about two interesting developments in Quest SDKs. The first is that Meta now has this tool called the Quest Runtime Optimizer in Unity, which is a really interesting high-level user-friendly approach to fixing performance bottlenecks, especially for newbie developers. Then we'll talk about Niantic Spatial SDK coming to Quest. You may know Niantic as originally, before the split off that we'll talk about, the developer of Pokemon Go. And so their SDK actually brings some groundbreaking capabilities to Quest 3, including outdoor VPS. So in many parts of the world, many cities, you can localize the Quest headset as if you had a centimeter accurate GPS. Long distance live meshing, so that's continuous scene meshing that even works at long distances in large outdoor environments and warehouses and museums. And it also brings some other, more minor features like object classification and things like that you can already kind of do with the pass-through API, but they have a very polished solution here. Then we will talk about MacRumor's apparent finding of an M5 Apple Vision Pro in Apple code. So they are suggesting that we've been seeing so many rumors here about this next Vision Pro. Some have said M4, some have said M5. This seems to all but confirm M5 if it is truly present in Apple's code. We'll also talk about Vivo's Apple Vision Pro copycat, Vivo being that Chinese smartphone company that they were teasing all year. Turns out it's not shipping this year. It will be an in-store demo only and only in China for now. So taking the wind out of the Vivo sails a little bit there. Then we will talk about the new Pico OS update for Pico 4 Ultra. If you're American, you probably don't care because Pico isn't sold in your country, but you still should care because it's the only real direct competitor to Quest 3, and they're doing some very interesting, unique things. So they now have an enhanced body tracking mode with 5 Pico trackers. You can strap the extra 2 to either your thighs or your forearms, and we'll talk about that. It also has a travel mode, just like Quest and Vision Pro have had for a long time. Then we will discuss PlayStation VR 2 getting eye tracking on PC thanks to an open source mod of the driver. And it also brings some other advantages. They've brought the adaptive triggers to PC. They've improved the controller tracking. So this is a mod of Sony's official Steam VR driver that adds these features and improves things. And finally, once we are through those 9 topics, we will discuss Boba 3 and Tiramisu, those future tech prototypes from Meta, and we'll discuss what I thought of them, what they mean, could anything in them ship, what's the significance there. So hello everyone in the comments. It's great to see everyone. I'm glad to hear that Davin Bigelow is saying that they are so hyped for the future of VR.
Yeah,
I'm really glad to see that.
Davin has the right mindset for this show, I think. I see Stormy out there, and then of course Steve and Onakazi. Let's see, Sal, Steve, Matthew, Oakley, Actual, and Big. We see you all out there. That's going to be the last portion of this conversation. We'll build up to it as we always do. So sit back, and as we sort of tear through it, there's a couple subjects here. I guess you could start to guess what I'll comment on, but I'm excited to hear David dive into that last section. SIGGRAPH, if in case you're unfamiliar, is the computer graphics conference of the industry, and it has been sort of the place to premiere new graphics technology for more than 30 years. I would be curious what year they actually started SIGGRAPH, but Pixar's early days debuting every new technology that you now see in every single movie you see, right? It all starts at SIGGRAPH. So when David goes and sees things at SIGGRAPH, we have kind of like we're going to have a long conversation about when we are going to see the things he saw there actually in front of our eyes in our homes, right? We're going to have a conversation about that. You're not going to get anywhere else about whether some of those things are feasible in our, midterm future here for virtual reality. So hello to Headset Historian. We see you popping in. Our travelers, our time travelers, as you catch up throughout the show. A lot of people end up watching us on 2x speed, which I feel bad for as they're listening to us go in the chipmunk speeds. But I totally understand it as they try to catch up for that final conversation. So, David, I am excited to have you run through as many of these as quickly as we can, so we can have that conversation at the end.
Yep, let's just dig straight into it then, starting with our news topics. So, BeamXR Live. It lets you live stream natively directly from your Quest headset with no PC needed. So it reduces the friction. It means if you don't have a gaming PC, or if one family member is using the gaming PC or something like that, you can still live stream to YouTube and Twitch. So it's a cool little solution to see. Meta is obviously only focused on letting you live stream to Facebook. They do have an integration for YouTube chat, but not a native way to stream to YouTube. So this was a good spot by my colleague Henry Stockdale. There's not a lot to say about it, but it is certainly an interesting app. It's free now in early access. Perhaps they will start charging after that. Any thoughts on this one, Ian?
No, I think we can probably go to the next one pretty quickly. I do have some thoughts on the next one I want to talk about a little bit. So yeah, is there anything you want to? I didn't see anything in the chat yet. I think people are still sort of filing in as they've heard the call out for VR download on a Friday. Yeah, you're not imagining it. We are not broadcasting this on our normal day. We had to travel. David had to get through the real world to get to these headsets, and that was a whole journey. And then get back to England this week. So he had to do that whole turnaround. And but I did that in 24 hours or something, or 48 hours sometime recently, but that's a tough turnaround, even in the turnaround you had to do it in. Like it's heinous. Like that's so many more hours in the air. I didn't even think about that. Sorry. Anyways, let's move on, David. I'm excited to talk about this next one.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the travel, I miss air conditioning. That's the thing I miss about North America, Vancouver, being in Canada, being in North America. The all the buildings in the hotel was air conditioned. I'm now back here, jet lagged and roasting. It is still a UK heat wave. This damn building is designed, like all our UK buildings, to retain the heat in the 20th century winters. But in the 20th, we don't have snow anymore. Winter, it's just the sun all the time, and yeah, but we wouldn't be anywhere else than here. And yeah, we're excited to talk about this stuff. Um, and Headset Historian is actually commenting on this story and saying that they think it's a really big deal, and that there are people who want to stream VR, but the friction stops them from doing it. So this might allow kind of a new category of streamers to come in. And that's good for VR, right? If people are streaming on Twitch and YouTube, if they're showing the best of VR, the best places, the best games, the best worlds, then maybe some people click on that stream and they buy a headset and jump in themselves. But yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this next one, Ian. So this is Adobe Substance 3D Reviewer. It's a free Quest app from Adobe. It has two components. There's a web app, which you access from desktop or technically your Quest browser if you want. And then there is the VR app that is on the Meta Horizon store for Quest. So on the web app, you can upload 3D models and to create a review, which is kind of Adobe's name for a session with a 3D model. And you can also participate in these reviews on the web app as a disembodied voice. But the real experience here that they're focused around is the VR one, where you appear as your meta avatar. It's quite low friction. I tested this out very quickly. And whatever 3D model you have, I threw a bunch of different file formats at it and it worked. It just appears there. Now, there are lots of apps that do this. This is not new. It's not unique. But they have a kind of very low friction solution here, which is on the web app, when you upload the model, you can then just click launch in VR. And if you've linked your Meta account to your Adobe Reviewer account, it'll just open in your headset. So you can put on the headset and jump straight in. So they've really thought about trying to streamline this from a friction perspective. And to be clear, you're not just there, with a model in front of you and voice chat. That would be fine in itself, but you obviously do have the ability to do like annotations. You can essentially pin spatial notes onto different parts of the model. So nothing groundbreaking here, but I always think in software, it's not about the feature set in many ways. The software that people choose to use over time and that wins per se is actually the one that has the best UX, the easiest experience, the most frictionless experience. So if you're a small team, this could be good for you.
Yeah, I talked to David about this where I was trying to like have him walk me through the fundamentals, and it was like multiple people account linking in order to do some of this stuff seems absurd, and the part of the user experience is all of that. What is the equivalent of portable document format, PDFs, for VR? We don't have that established yet. We have GLTF 3D models, we have USDZ 3D models. Some of them can be animated, some of them can't. How they get lit by your environment, how they don't, are all open questions that are interpreted in different ways by different systems. It is a heck of a question, and it's going to be a long road ahead. But logging into multiple accounts to view 3D models with your friends doesn't seem like a winning solution. However, we'll see.
Yeah, so you raise an interesting point there. Well, two interesting points. The first is the account saying, yes, you need an Adobe account to use this and you need to sign in. I think if you were just wanting to view a 3D model with a friend one time, that would be a lot of friction. But the purpose and the focus here is pretty much on, teams of creatives that would sign up once. And that is a little bit of a friction point for the first time, but it's about the post setup friction, how much friction there is each time you want to pop in. But totally take your point about that. When it comes to like the PDF of VR, I think GLTF is it, right? The Kronos group, the same one that manages OpenXR, is managing that. They are adding a bunch of features, but you do have this industry pressure as well from the likes of Apple and Pixar and things like that for USDZ. And there is a little bit of confusion around this. There's interoperability between them. We'll have to see how this plays out, but I think it seems like GLTF is probably going to be the winner for independent creatives and consumers, and then maybe like bigger professional projects are using USDZ. That's what I'm seeing so far.
Yeah, it was seeing so far is there can always be big changes in royalty plans or how patents are used can change overnight for strategic reasons. So there could be changes over the long term, and we will keep on watching that. I like Daniel Leeper saying air conditioning is for the weak. I am in my office with 3 or 4 fans blowing on me right now without air conditioning. So not quite as hot as I think you are right now, David. But I'm what I love is I do have them on Siri command, so I can turn them off and on with Siri, and ideally, right, hopefully those get activated in VR eventually, right? Like I want the Dragon 3D model that we have right here when it's blowing fire and it's animating right here and it's presented for both of us. I want, when it flaps its wings, those 4 fans around me to just give me a little bit slightly different burst of wind. And that is going to take a long time for us to get to. So, yeah, that's how big we think about VR. And I think we will get there. It's just what year, right? All right. Are we ready to talk about anything else? Any interesting comments you want to talk about first?
Yeah, I think we can move on to the next topic here. This is another one that we just want to note. I see Icy Monsters saying that they debated going to Vancouver to meet me and Brad as well, but it didn't work out. So hopefully see you there next year, I guess. Let's get on to this SDK stuff because we really do want to get to the later parts of this show. So this one, I just want to note because it's an interesting solution. There are, of course, already low-level graphic optimization tools that developers use. And if you're an experienced graphics developer or an experienced game developer, those are great, RenderDoc and such. But if you're a newbie developer in VR, if you aren't used to building for mobile chipsets and you're used to kind of not having to really dig into the depths of optimization, Meta has released this tool for Unity called the Quest Runtime Optimizer. Ignore the fact that this image says Meta XR Runtime Optimizer. In Unity, it's called the Quest Runtime Optimizer. And it has these 2 different features, bottleneck analysis and what-if analysis. So bottleneck analysis kind of ranks the entities within your scene. That's, the combination of meshes, textures, and materials by expected performance cost, while the what-if analysis performs an automated A/B experiment by disabling game objects in your camera's view one by one and measuring the performance cost. So I'll bring up kind of the interface of this here. And the advantage here compared to the lower level graphics optimization tools is that you get this kind of graphical user interface, easy to understand list of bottlenecks that you can fix to improve the performance of your app. So, here's like a what if analysis here, find out how many seconds can be saved for each game object. Here's the bottleneck analysis that shows insights on the possible graphics bottlenecks. And yeah, this is great, I think, for inexperienced developers, especially because optimizing for mobile chipsets is so difficult. The best Quest games that are developed by these massive, well-funded teams that have years and really experienced graphics programmers, Red Matter 2, Batman Arkham Shadow, Asgard's Wrath 2, these games can pull off very impressive fidelity that, maybe gets to, late PS3, early PS4 feeling. But the typical developer, you'll of course notice, isn't able to pull off those graphics. And this isn't going to magically, bring your average Quest app all the way up to Red Matter 2, but it is going to make it a little bit easier for inexperienced and new developers, as well as developers who are, more focused on maybe gameplay mechanics than wanting to always have to dig down into low-level graphics stuff to just get a little bit more performance out of the game. So it seems like a good thing to me.
All right, I have an idea here, David. I'm seeing a couple comments, and I just wanted to just take this sidebar and mention next week we had already talked about this, about trying to schedule our next show ahead of time to be really clear when we're broadcasting that we're getting in here. We have a lot of people file in when we do that. We go back and forth on whether we have the time to really devote to this show, like focus on it. We've got a lot of news happening. Some days there's suddenly a wave of news, and it's Thursday. when we plan to broadcast, and it drives us nuts actually having to try to get out here. So yes, we will try to communicate better when we can't, or if something happens to that Thursday broadcast. But the flip of that is like actually scheduling it out. So we're going to try to schedule it out. And if something happens to that, we'll try to communicate on the video somewhere, the changing plan. But just know that we're trying our best to keep that schedule with you all. And if you see that next week, that we scheduled out ahead of time, please hit that like button and send that signal to everyone else that we're going to try to keep reliability here and put that video out there really early for you guys.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, as Ian mentioned earlier, I was flying across the Atlantic to try headsets. Those 2 articles are up now on UploadVR.com. They just came out over the past few hours. We would have loved to have done a show on Thursday as well. Fortunately, there's just not always time, but I'm here because I want to be here with you all. It is Friday night in the UK, and I'm choosing to be here, and I wouldn't be anywhere else. So it's great to be here with you all. A headset historian is so just to come back to this story here. Headset historian is saying any software that helps developers improve performance is a massive win. Nice to see there's dev time being put into this, and can be easy for companies to ignore tools for the sake of flash. Yeah, I agree with that, and I think it can also be easy for people who are experienced in graphics programming to overestimate the experience of more pedestrian game developers, especially some of the tips that John Carmack used to give. A lot of them were like low-level stuff that sometimes would be stuff that's actually handled by Unity and can't even be touched by developers. So it would only really be relevant to native engine developers. And of course, that's really valuable. And I know for a fact that people who work at Unity and Unreal implemented some of those suggestions from Carmack 10 years ago back in the day. But now, developers at these high levels need a lot more kind of practical experience.
Yeah, I'm seeing some interesting comments out there. Someone asking about are you optimistic that whether Asus will release their high-end headset at Connect next month? It's such an interesting question. I always, are you optimistic is such a beautiful word there, because we always get ahead of ourselves hoping for things that don't actually happen. So like I don't want to do that. But I want to point out like this sort of gap in the meta innovation timeframe, right? We had the Fresnel lenses on the Quest 3S. That's actually a pretty big gap in time for Meta not to like ship something new with top end specs that build on what the Quest 3 was capable of. So that's my balanced answer, I think. We'll see if David disagrees or agrees or whatever with what I just said.
I think it's difficult to know. We don't see any indications of it launching at Connect. There's no rumor or leak that suggests it. There is also a big possibility that this will be handled by Asus, that they will be the one to do it, and you need to look for when is Asus's next big event. Just like Lenovo is the other company that's supposed to be doing it. Maybe you need to look at, when's Lenovo's next event. If we hear any rumors about it, we'll let you know. I think my expectation is that Meta Connect 2025 is going to be all about Meta Celeste, the HUD glasses. I think, sure, on the software side, there's going to be Horizon OS stuff. I do think they have some big things brewing for Horizon OS and Horizon Worlds, but I think from a hardware perspective, it's going to be Celeste.
Do we think the Asus headset would be compatible with the Meta charging dock? What a fascinating question on that one. We have to see. It's too. What we've heard on the far out future is that they're starting to approach the idea of a connected puck that you have between the headset and the strapped pack that you have somewhere on your person. That would be the far future. What's the in between look like? And the charging solution on Quest 3 was pretty useful. And then they squashed that down. They removed that from the Quest 3S, right? And then like I pay it out of pocket for the charging dock, because my perfect solution ultimately here is to put the Quest headset in a bag and then have the controllers sitting on the charging dock. And I don't have to have the big bulky charging dock that even the headset doesn't even fit on that charging dock really great, right? I have to get it just right to have it sit on the charging dock just right. So I just have the charging dock for the controllers now, and then the headset goes in a bag, and that's how I store everything. And that's the winning model for all my headsets all around me.
Yeah, I think as you've said many times in the past, Ian, what we really do need is a charging case. Your Ray-Ban Meta glasses come with a charging case. I love my Quest 3's charging dock because I do have the space for it and I'm picking it up constantly to try things. But if you were someone who, your job isn't to use your Quest 3 all day, you have to maybe just use it once or twice a week and you want to keep it in a bag, it should stay charged. You should absolutely be able to put it in a charging bag, connect that to USB-C and just leave it there, or even, have a big battery in there that's charging it over time. So hopefully we see that at some point. There was a Chinese company that built one, but I think it was pretty terrible. There aren't good reviews there. Let's move on to talk about the Niantic SDK, because I think this is a really, really big deal. And some people have recognized that, but I don't think enough have. So this is Niantic, who you would probably know as the developer of Pokemon Go. However, a couple of months ago, they sold off their games business to Scopely, this company that's like owned by Saudi Arabia. But then they spun off their technology, their spatial tech, into a new company called Niantic Spatial. So Pokemon Go and all that is away to Saudi Arabia, but the Niantic technology is still here. And they're providing it to developers, and now they have brought it to Quest 3. So there are two pretty huge features that this brings, as well as some minor ones. I'm going to really focus on the two big ones. The first one is VPS, Visual Positioning System. So you all know what GPS is, right? Satellite signals, you compare them, the amount of time it takes from the satellite, and you figure out your position in the world. GPS is accurate to maybe a meter or two, depending on your situation, except in cities when there are dense buildings around you, big skyscrapers, where the signal will get blocked and scatter and reflect. And you'll have seen this yourself, right? You look on your Maps app on your phone in a city with skyscrapers, and the little blue dots bouncing all over the place, dozens of meters at times. So that's not going to be a practical technology if you want to do real world outdoor XR experiences that need to know exactly where you are to match up a virtual experience to a real world place. This is why VPS is a thing. You may have already used VPS in Google Maps. If you're ever navigating on foot in Google Maps and you see this little feature called Live View, and you bring up the camera and it has these floating blue arrows that help you know where to go, that's using VPS. So how VPS works, completely different than GPS. It uses computer vision to analyze patterns, sort of high contrast features in the view of a camera, and then compares it to a 3D world map, a point cloud of the planet or parts of the planet, and tries to figure out where you are based on that. It's quite like the point cloud thing I'm talking about. It's a sparse point cloud. It's the same kind of one that the positional tracking SLAM of headsets would generate. And so by matching these up, by matching your camera view to this pre-existing, pre-mapped 3D point cloud of the world, they can figure out exactly where you are, not just positionally, but rotationally. This is a 6-DoF pose with centimeter accuracy. So Google's, as you probably would guess, works by using Street View data, right? Google has Street View, amazing resource. You would be crazy if you're Google to not use it for something like this. Niantic's works based on all of the buildings and locations that people have scanned from games like Pokemon Go. So if you ever played Pokemon Go, all of those Pokestops you were scanning and things like that, they are actually building up Niantic's giant map of the world. It was never really about Pikachu. It was about this spatial map they were building up. And so they have millions of locations around the world as part of their VPS from all of these data sources, as well as, of course, they go and manually update it. And they, people using the SDK in certain circumstances are able to do it. So what this means on Quest is that if you want, especially if you're an enterprise developer or some kind of museum or outdoor exhibition developer, build Quest experiences that take place and relate to physical, real world outdoor objects based on their position. So that's a capability that's now available on Quest. The other feature, flagship feature, I should say, that the Niantic SDK brings is long distance live meshing. So we talked about how the developer of LaserTag implemented continuous scene meshing. That means that instead of having this static scene mesh that's only scanned once per setup. You might do the setup once and then never again. You have this dynamic scene mesh. You don't have to do the scan manually. You don't have to go around your room and scan it. And things that were there aren't baked into the scene mesh. If you move furniture, that doesn't get incorporated into Quest's meta scene mesh. Niantic's, just like the one we saw in laser tag, updates in real time. But it's actually more impressive than that because it works even at long distance. It's not just close, because the laser tag developer is using Meta's depth API, which works only up to maybe 5 meters. Niantic, for their VPS and for this live meshing, is using their own custom computer vision algorithms on the pass-through API. It's the pass-through API that makes this possible. Niantic is, just like any other developer can, taking in the pass-through camera feed and running a computer vision model. Only in this case, Niantic has been working on this computer vision model for 10 years now. They have been working on this real-world geospatial AR, AI, whatever they want to call it. There's a lot of hype words involved, but it does have practical use cases for developers. So these two features are pretty huge. The caveat here is that this is not a free SDK. There is a small cost. I think it's 1 cent per localization. So you only need, for the VPS, you only need to localize once per session, but that is 1 cent per session. And when it comes to using the scene meshing, it's like a royalty system. So it's it's how many monthly active users your app has, you pay a certain amount to Niantic. That is the big caveat here. This isn't free, but if you are a developer that wants to build an outdoor mixed reality experience with Quest headsets, I think, depending on your use cases, is probably going to be worth it.
Got a question out there asking us about the Meta AI coverage that has been going around. We have an article on that on UploadVR.com. Question was, did Ian see the stuff on Meta internally discussing very suspicious conversations with their AI interaction with children? Yeah, I've got a couple questions I put out there on Threads, Meta's platform out there for public conversation. It's Meta's platform is the key there. But put some questions out there. I think I've been muted by the CTO of Meta in the past based on a previous question that didn't go over well. And yeah, but I think the new questions I put there are pretty clear. I'd like to know you can read the statement. They put a statement out there in reply to Reuters. And if you go read the statement, it's not saying much. It's you tease apart those words, and it's just a lot of hand wavery, and it's not saying much. So I'd like to know a little bit more about the decision-making processes here. And further than that, the empathy in me, the person who cares about other people, wonders how many humans were involved in this task at Meta, whether they chose that task or whether they were told to do it, how they felt about doing this task. Because ultimately we don't have time for that today. We'll get into it in another show, another podcast, like a different time to get into this more. But I very much would like to hear from Meta employees who whether their experience has changed over the course of their employment, right? Is the sense of working there right now in August 2025 the same as it was in May 2025 or even May 2024, right? What's it like to be at that place and work there? And have you felt any changes in the air? I think that's something we should talk about more. So, David, anything else you want to say on that subject? Go read the article on UploadVR.com.
Yeah, definitely read that article from Henry. He's really broken that down well, and obviously very disturbing original reporting there from Reuters. Also very curious of what went on there and kind of what people made those decisions and why. It's perplexing without knowing the context. It seems almost verging on kind of evil, and you look at the context there around how AI would interact with children. So I really would love to see that, and maybe Reuters will kind of come out with a follow-up report on that as people are more willing to talk now that it's out there. Coming back to the Niantic SDK stuff, Uncanny Express says that they used Niantic Lightship and their early VPS. Yes, that is what it used to be called. If you're a developer, you may be familiar with that. Lightship was their old name for this VPS. Uncanny Express says they used it to work on an augmented reality rhythm game for Android, and so they're excited to see where this goes. Sampler 19 says that there's so much potential for AR games outdoors. Pokemon Go had such a simple mechanic, and even they were fun. Yeah, I think like we've spoken on this podcast before. Actually, Ian has brought up these ideas of how do we have these outdoor games and go to the park. Well, here's the SDK to do it. At this point, like this is the tech. It's here. What's missing, I think, is hardware. I always bring this up. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I would not. I would very, very rarely use a headset outdoors in the UK for the obvious reason that it can literally start raining at any time, and the water droplets would go straight into the cooling fan and destroy the headset. These are not water-resistant devices. I wonder how long will it be until we get a pass-through mixed reality headset designed to be used outdoors that is water resistant. That's a huge design challenge to make something like that water resistant. I'm sure there are hardware engineers listening that are almost cringing with the thought of how you would even do that, given the way that the thermal dissipation works on these things. Maybe you would need to have some kind of fanless design. Maybe you would need to do something exotic like how the Apple Watch pushes out water. There are all kind of interesting designs here. But, you know, the other side of that is if it's too warm outdoors, the headset's going to overheat quite quickly. The thermals, again, become a huge issue. The sun baking your headset, getting the fan going hotter and faster, and then the performance eventually is going to kind of cut out. So very difficult design challenge. This is interesting to be in a situation now where we have the software, but arguably not the hardware.
Yeah, very important to see what Niantic is doing here. I'm so appreciative that you've sort of outlined it. It's going to be important to see how this map is used, who uses it, and how Pokemon Go. I've stopped using Pokemon Go almost overnight, and I miss it to a certain extent. But I want Pokemon that feels I don't know, with features that are top to bottom modeled for modern life, the next 10 years. So I'm going to collect Pokemon for 10 years. I'm not going to collect it in Pokemon Go.
Yeah, I mean, I think, do you mean because it's on the smartphone or because of the Scopely Saudi Arabia thing there? Or both?
What a fantastic question, David.
So I'm just making sure. Do you want to answer?
I'm not gonna. I haven't made up my mind, and it's still there, right? It's still, the account's still there, right?
Sure.
It's just my heart has left Pokemon Go, and you're asking me why, and it's like, I don't know, it's somewhere else now. It's not in that game.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, just to be clear, for moving on from this topic here, we did say it, but just want to be very clear. So Niantic Games, that includes Pokemon Go, it is part of Scopely, which is Saudi Arabia owned, but the company behind this SDK, Niantic Spatial, is a still American spin-off that is just doing the kind of core tech now. So those concerns around Saudi Arabia certainly are there for Pokemon Go, but that they, depending on how you want to define it, wouldn't really be there for Niantic Spatial. Are we ready to talk about Vision Pro M5 and the Vivo Chinese clone?
Yep. Tell us what this bit of detail is. There's indications of an M4 or an M. Yeah, tell me what the indications here. What is the trail of data?
Yeah, so it's been all over the place. Originally last year, supply chain analyst Ming-Chi Kuo reported that Apple's next headset would be an M5 spec bump of the Apple Vision Pro. So the M5 chip is not out yet. Apple has not officially announced it. The highest chip in terms of number is the M4 at the moment. Then earlier this year, Bloomberg's Mark Gurman also echoed that Apple was going for an M5 Vision Pro, and said, however, that it wouldn't just be a spec bump, it would also be kind of cheaper and lighter. Then Mark Gurman came out very recently and said, actually, it's going to be an M4 Vision Pro, and the only other change is that it will have a more comfortable head strap. And that brings us to today, this week, where we now have a report from Mac Rumors who say that they have actually spotted in Apple code direct references to an M5 Vision Pro. So that seems pretty definitive to me if they are finding what they claim to have found. It does seem on the balance of evidence, if I had to guess, the M5 is going to be the chip in the next Vision Pro, but I guess it's possible there's an M4. The other possibility, of course, is that Apple is trialing both, and they're trying to decide on certain factors. It could be kind of thermal issues with one of the chips. It could be a cost thing of whether they want to, bring down the cost slightly. It could just be some minor engineering thing. We know that these companies often have multiple candidates of their next headset. I think what we can say on balance, though, with a high degree of confidence, is that within the next sort of 6 to 9 months, it does look like Apple is going to refresh the Vision Pro with a chip upgrade.
Boy, that's a big subject to talk about. There's a lot of ways to think about it, right? There's everyone in the comments, right? There's so many people that are going to be unserved by $3,500, even if they price drop it a little bit. It's still so far out of the realm of possibility for so many people. However, I think there's a very interesting category of people to talk to, and that's existing Vision Pro owners, and are they going to upgrade? And I would love if there's anyone in our comments who fits that category. I'm not going to fill the air with my opinion on that one right now. I'd like to hear from others on that subject. But I think that there's so few in this camp to begin with, and there's so many in the other camp of just screamers complaining about Apple prices, right? That, you need to go listen to the people who actually use the current thing and say, what are they doing to try to, are they interested in a spec bump and what it means to them? Because, yeah, I've got some thoughts here on what that spec bump is capable of.
Yeah, that is a good point. Will we see enough of a bump here for Vision Pro existing owners to upgrade? So Apple hasn't announced the M5. We don't know what the M5 is, but even the M4 has a 50% more powerful CPU and 4 times more powerful GPU than the M2, as well as a twice as powerful neural engine, the NPU. So regardless of whether it's M4 or M5, this is going to be an enormous jump. And, it's not the biggest issue with Vision Pro. It's not like you try Vision Pro and go, damn, this thing isn't powerful enough. But there are things that they can do with that upgrade, as well as the obvious benefits of higher graphical fidelity. One subtlety of Vision Pro is that app developers of kind of their own engine apps can't easily access the eye tracking, so they can't use eye track foveated rendering. And so in apps like that, the resolution in Vision Pro is actually a little bit low. In something like Job Simulator, it doesn't look very sharp. So you might get automatic bumps there where even things that aren't using the eye track foveated rendering look better. Of course, you can also then do, photorealistic rendering in these apps that do use Reality Kit. They could deliver like PC VR level graphics with this kind of performance. The other thing is with the neural engine, they'll be able to do more computer vision tasks. They might be able to do body tracking. The segmentation of your hands and arms might be better, especially in low light. There's all kind of computer vision stuff they can do. But I mean, when it comes to price, I think one possibility here that we mentioned before is that they might keep selling the M2 version and bring the price down, and then keep the new version, the M4 or M5, at $3,500. Of course, though, as a lot of people here are saying in the comments, that's not really the issue for them. I see, Jukebox here saying another $3,000 offering. Will they ever learn? So look, Apple knows that $3,500 is too expensive, but they have a minimum quality of experience they want to deliver, and that requires high-end specs, including these 4K micro OLED displays. And you're not going to see Apple come out with some $500 stripped-down product. But what will happen is that gradually over time, as micro OLED supply production increases and costs come down, as Apple refines their processes, as they're able to use powerful future A-series chips, you will see cheaper and lighter headsets from Apple. So, this is Apple's immediate term plan, according to all the reports that we've seen, to just bump Vision Pro, to keep it relevant, to keep it kind of a little bit more powerful. But we have seen multiple reports now that point to Apple working on what some dub Vision Air. We don't know the real name. It's just how they've dubbed it, for 2027. So, around 2 years from now, that would be, according to these reports, half the weight and half the price. And you may say, even half the weight and half the price, that's too much. Over time, it'll get cheaper. The reality is that groundbreaking new technology is rarely, if it's high quality, cheap. The first Macintosh was, in today's money, tens of thousands of dollars. The first DVD player was $1,000. the quality of experience in Apple Vision Pro is sublime. Vision OS is incredible. I think it's in a better position to be in to have an amazing experience and just need to bring down the cost and weight than to have a low cost experience that people aren't interested in as much that you need to bring up. So Meta and Apple are tackling this in very different directions. I know it sucks if you can't afford it. I know $3,500 is a ridiculous price, but it will get more affordable over time.
All right, so now can I give my thoughts on what I want out of this thing? Since
Please do. Please, yes.
So if it goes to M5, or if they're actually able to pack in that many more billions of transistors, right? That much more power into this thing. I want, number one, the one rumor that we've heard is a better strap. The one thing I want out of a better strap is a built-in USB-C port. I mentioned this on a previous podcast, but I want a USB-C port so I can bring in anything locally over that. Honestly, that plus almost little else. Use all of that overhead in all those extra transistors for more computer vision and for maybe virtualization of Mac OS inside of Vision Pro. But that's that's secondary. That's secondary, in my opinion, to just give us a little bit more computer vision. I want to see the cats running around on the floor.
I think you're absolutely right. I think there's so much potential here with that. Right, if it's M4, it's a twice as powerful MPU. That's all of these computer vision tasks that can be done. If it's M5, it's going to be even more. I think people do see this and they go, oh, we don't need more speeds and feeds on Vision Pro, but we are at this stage where these capabilities from computer vision matter. So today you can do static object tracking with Vision Pro. You can track a 3D object like a globe on a desk, and it's like 1 frame per second tracking. It's not meant for the object to move. It's meant to be clear, it will stay, high quality as you move your head, but if you move the object, it's not designed for that. Could we get dynamic object tracking? Could Vision Pro turn any object in your home into a controller? Could it literally in real time mesh a 3D object in your hand and bring it into VR? That sounds science fiction, but we're in an era where that's not impossible. We've seen models that can do this, not in real time. Apple has this end-to-end control of hardware and software. People often say that Apple is behind on AI, and that's kind of true in the generative AI sense. But when you talk about machine learning in general, Apple products actually do have very high-quality ML running. If you're on a MacBook, you can always select text from any image because they're constantly running, a dynamic kind of character recognition thing. There's all of these minor little things that are going on. So I think you're absolutely right, Ian, to call out that we could see some really improved computer vision capabilities here, including, I don't see why we wouldn't see pet tracking. And also, I agree with your other point. What I want out of Vision Pro 2 with more compute is I want it to be an actual spatial computer. I want Mac virtual display, where it works exactly like Mac virtual display today, except there's no physical Mac at all, just a Bluetooth keyboard, and it's all virtualized. If Apple wants to do it, they can do it. They have full control over the hardware and software. The only reason they wouldn't do it, and I'm looking at you, Tim Cook, is because they want to sell you a MacBook and a Vision Pro.
Interesting question out there from D1360. And James, if you're still out there, I'm curious, are you buying Superman on your Apple Vision Pro? So I want to see you answer that question real quick out there, James. And I got a second question for you that we'll try to answer D1360's question if James is out there. Yeah, 3D video is really, really interesting. And it's a case-by-case basis, which 3D content whether the 3D content you've purchased is worth viewing in VR. It's a fascinating question with a lot of layers to it that I think we're going to unfold over time. But I want to see if James answers that question. Yeah, James is responding there at the end. What's his last comment? I can't quite read it. It's covered up there. Yeah, they said I did recently buy Man of Steel to see it in 3D. All right, so I got Superman on my Apple Vision Pro, and I got it specifically to go and examine the 3D effect because I knew it was a really fun movie in theaters. I loved it, had a great time. I'm like, okay, let's see if it takes it up a notch on my headset. I haven't watched it yet, right? I spent the money to have it in my library to try to get to it this weekend. And this fascinating question out there is, I know James out there has an Apple headset as well. and we would totally watch Superman together. Like it would be pretty effortless for us to do that. Um, but he has to go buy the movie too. And that's kind of a pain in the butt. We have a company called Big Screen that's been out there for more than 10 years that had this figured out a decade ago on PC VR with Big Screen, right? And you've got a headset that they've made, and it's the foundation of everything they do is being able to do this without having to jump through these hoops before you do it. I got to bring up all of that stuff, right? Like James and I are discussing whether we want to, oh, I guess I should buy. Yeah. See, and now I feel bad though. We're out a whole chunk of money, each of us, in order for us to go and have that 3 hour or 2.5 hour watching session of Superman. And I've just guilted him into it basically through the powers of peer pressure through the internet in order to making that purchase. But will that price come down? Will it be $25 for the two of us to go watch a 3D movie? Absolutely. Well, someone will figure out that model, but we're not there yet. And you both have to have the same headset, and you could both have to have the same content. Like you both have to know each other, right? What are the chances you each know each other in the real world and each have a headset? And anyways, that's long-winded way of saying I'll get back to you next week on whether Superman is worth paying for to see it in 3D in VR.
Yeah, look, we say this often on this show, but we mean it, and we're right. This is the early days still of XR. We're still in the early days of these VR mixed reality headsets, whatever you want to call them. AR glasses haven't even launched. This is like being, I don't want to put an exact time on it, but the late 1980s or the early 1990s, depending on where you think we are for computing, personal computing, desktop PCs. This is a multi-decade journey. We are really still at the start, and all of these things are still being worked out. So I'm going to read a couple of comments here before we move on to the next topic. Clayman is asking, I understood 3.5K for the first one, but the next one, at this rate, why would you think a third one would be dramatically less? The answer there, Clay, is that this is not a new design. This is just a spec bump. So what dictates the price and the bulk of these headsets is primarily the display and optics architecture. And so with this Apple Vision Air, as people are dubbing it, again, unofficial name, in 2027, the understanding is that it will have a new display and optics architecture. It will use cheaper, more scalable micro OLED displays, or even perhaps high-density regular OLED on glass. That's a potential theory about how Apple's going to get the cost down. So it's a regular OLED, not a micro OLED, but it's so dense that it's almost close to micro OLED density. Very interesting possibility for how they get the cost down, as well as, of course, then improved lighter optics and just better general engineering. One thing I don't think we can say Apple doesn't have a track record for is taking products and miniaturizing and streamlining them. Maybe in this kind of recent era of Apple, that's no longer a focus because they've already gotten so many of their primary product lines down to being so thin and light. But anyone in the audience who has been around for the 1990s, the early 2000s, you will have seen Apple take these MacBooks and these iPods and all of these devices and made them thinner and lighter. It was almost used to be a meme of Johnny Ive coming out and saying in his beautiful British accent that it was 1 millimeter thicker or 1 millimeter thinner, and it's the thinnest whatever device you've ever seen. This is something that Apple has a lot of experience in doing. Look at how much tech they can jam in to something like AirPods. I don't think it's impossible that they're going to do it, and I understand why you may look at this and go, oh, it's the same thing, just a spec bump. This is an intermediary. The real new design is 2027, 2028. We're still in the early days. These micro OLED displays are still ridiculously expensive at this kind of density. The future is coming, but it will be very slow to arrive. I seen another comment asking, did they miss the Boba 3 and Tiramisu discussion? No, you did not. It is at the end of the show. We're currently on topic 6, and Boba 3 and Tiramisu are 10:11. So we're going to speed up here a little bit. The last comment I want to address is from Alexis saying, Vision Pro could use controllers. I've got really good news for you. Vision OS 26 is probably going to ship in September. And not only do you get PlayStation VR 2 Sense controllers, you also get the Logitech Muse stylus. So 2 different types of track controllers depending on what you want to do. And as Ian and I are speculating, maybe Vision Pro 2 will let you turn anything in your house into a controller by real time scanning it as a 3D object and tracking it in real time. Let's see.
Yep, I'm desperate for it, and I've already. It's already this has already transformed my home. This is Vision OS 26 has transformed my home. I now have an Ethernet cord running in each room that takes the PC that's in one room into every other room, and then I have a connector to bring it straight in, and yeah, I'm very anxious to see what comes next. Tell me about this copycat, though. Are we ready to talk about the copycat now?
Yeah, let's talk about that. Back in April, I think it was Vivo, Chinese smartphone company that I think has like 10 or 20% market share around the world, announced Vivo Vision, and they showed it off, the design, back in April. They didn't say anything other than name and design. And you can see here that it's certainly inspired, as some other Chinese products tend to be. We've seen headsets that are describable as inspired by Vision Pro before, but I think perhaps even we should go a little bit further for this one and say it is a copycat. It's designed to look as much like Vision Pro as possible. In the United States, where Chinese smartphones aren't officially sold, you might not have seen them, but you can walk into any kind of mobile network here or electronic store in Europe and see these Chinese phones that have these skins of Android that are all trying to look as much like iOS as possible. And it's a kind of funny contest of who can look as much like an iPhone and iOS as they can. There's complex reasons behind why this is the case, but you see the exact same pattern emerging here. I remember Pico kind of was in a area for a while where they were copying Meta. They've got their own identity now, but there were certainly times where they would, color for color, tab for tab, copy the Quest interface. And I remember, did Pico Worlds ever ship, the Horizon Worlds thing that looked like a complete copy? Anyway, the news here is that despite all the hype around this, and despite the fact that it does look slimmer and lighter than Vision Pro, you do see this as a sleeker design. Vivo has announced that it will not be shipping this year. Instead, it will be an in-store demo in their Chinese stores. So they call it the Vivo Vision Mixed Reality Headset Discovery Edition, as in you can discover it in a store and maybe next year we will sell it. They do say that compared to Vision Pro, which is being demoed all around China in Apple stores in China, to be clear, that this will have an ultra lightweight design. So that is kind of their spin here. But God, look at the battery. That's just a clone.
I like how it has all the physical appeal of a knockoff like 1990s telephone, right? Like that's a cheapo phone you bought in the 1990s, and that's their battery pack for this thing. That's what that looks like. That's weird.
I mean, look at this. I think it's not even the same. It's not really the 3D knitting of Vision Pro. I think it's just like normal fabric that's kind of shaped a little bit to
What's
look like.
with the light looking exactly like an Oculus camera?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It is, to be clear, just a light. There were other angles from this show that showed it is just to kind of make it look better in photos. Yeah, there's nothing we can really say about this headset because we don't know any other details other than that it will be a lightweight design.
See, David, this is what happens when we don't broadcast on Thursdays. People all freak out and recheck reality and like, wait, did the aliens kidnap me a day? Did I miss a week? What the heck just happened? They depend on us to confirm to them it's Thursday now. So I don't know. Just wait. That's something we didn't expect. Okay, so yeah, Mr. Mycelium, good luck on remembering where you are, who you are. We know that VR can take that away from you sometimes. All right, we ready to talk about the next one? I'm tired of talking about the copycat.
Yeah, just before we move on there's a question here from, I think, Sampler, who asked whether the Logitech MX Ink is called the...
Did everyone just lose David? Or did I just lose David? Someone needs to confirm what reality is out there. Let's see. Let's go over here. Yep, lost him. Yes, Kyle SW. Okay, good. Thank you. That's in the comments rolling in. That's a weird question to ask. I'm sorry. I mean, look, this is virtual reality, and if David is gone for a really long time, we don't want to see what will happen to where my mind goes, left alone here to its lonesome. Oh no, I broke David. He is gone. All right, he's gone. Thank you for confirming. I don't know what's real anymore. Is David a ghost? The thing is, I know David I know wherever he is has to still exist because we're broadcasting, right? So, I mean, I'm not too panicked about David. Mr. Mycelium asked me to talk about Joy-Cons. He's gone to a better place. It could have been the headset because the way he disconnected, it was like in stages, at least for me. It was 1, 2, 3. It was like his keyboard left after his avatar did. His avatar was erased, but his PC is still there. I mean, that's the thing. All right. I thought Play for Dreams were pretty good. Yeah. We want to look at Play for Dream and really analyze it. Could have a died headset. Maybe ran out of power. It's just a charging thing. Let's see if he's messaged on anywhere. Leave any if there's anything you want me to talk about specifically without letting me go off on Joy-Cons or something. Let me know. The PSVR 2 controllers with with Vision Pro are pretty fantastic. I love it. I was playing. So I had this set up last week. Let's see. We have lost David for the moment. We all lost David. So hopefully he'll be returning. I don't see him mentioning anything over on our chats yet. I played Walkabout Mini Golf on the Apple Vision Pro for the first time using the PSVR 2 controllers, using that Ethernet connection I was just suggesting to the dev strap, which takes it adds a USB-C port, and then I use a USB-C to Ethernet port or adapter, and then I had Ethernet come in from my PC in the other room. Then I had my PSVR 2 controller out there, and I was back in SteamVR Home. Felt good to be back in there after a little while without it. Launched Walkabout Mini Golf, and here's the thing about it. Here's what's remarkable about the whole flow and why it feels so right. Go onto our channel. Go watch my tour video that I just published yesterday of Tokyo, Passport Tokyo. Really, really cool course. But I was only able to record it in 1080p because that is the limit of the Coco Vision camera, the Live camera that they've been able to install inside of Walkabout. And if I had been recording that on my PC using the Apple Vision Pro, I'd hit end on the recording, and there would be a 4K recording of everything I had done sitting there on my PC waiting for me. I just get a thumb drive, pull it off, and get to editing. Really remarkable that model works. That now I've got a major reason to actually play Walkabout Mini Golf with an Apple Vision Pro and with my PC. I've now lost my. This happened. I'm in the menu system here, so my Padlet has fallen down, and it's a little bit bothersome here because I've got the comments here floating as a 3D window, so I can still watch you guys. Yes. Did I play the new Japan course? I played a few holes of it, but what I focus on my first few fly-throughs is looking at the art and talking to the devs. So I talked to Emma Mercado, I talked to Lucas Martel, and I talked to Don Carson. Those are the three artists at Walkabout Mini Golf. There's a lot more artists over there. Go watch that video. Lucas names almost every artist he can think of who touches Walkabout Mini Golf. So you've got a chance to hear the names of every single person who makes these beautiful places. He apologizes at some point if he misses a name. So if we missed you in that tour, and just remind him to mention it next time in our next tour, we'll every 6 or 7 weeks, they release a new course. So we can wait about a month and a half, and there should be a new course out there, and we'll be out there doing another tour. And I think I really like the model on this one, where I talk to multiple of the artists over there, because it's funny. These artists get nervous talking about their art because they don't want to say something wrong, but they're also all so passionate about the worlds that they created that when you get them going, they talk about these places. But I highly recommend go watch that video because also in it, all of those artists talked about the walkabout mini golf creation process. And in particular, they talk about the walkabout path. So if you're unfamiliar with this idea, the way they make that game is they go into Gravity Sketch and they rough out everything in a gray box world all around them. And what they build, the first thing they build in that world is what they call the walkabout path. And in that video, it's described for the first time that it's a yellow line going through the entire world from hole 1 to 18. And that line becomes the foundation, as I understand it, for basically everything else you see in this world. They start imagining the sight lines, they lay down, they go and place little hole markers where holes 1 to 18 are going to be. Yeah, David's absent is starting to worry me now that it's been so long. So let's see if he's messaged anywhere. What is going on with him? Let's see. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. So hopefully it's okay. But the fact that we're broadcasting means it's coming from the same, I assume he's watching me on his PC right now. So update us all in the comments, David, if you'll be coming back soon. And yeah, I appreciate the comment. This podcast brought to you by Walkabout Mini Golf. I feel bad. Like, yeah, I get it, right? I talk about it all the time. It's a running joke. They don't pay me anything. I have they do pay us. They pay UploadVR. David Wyatt is a patron for UploadVR.com. I've called it out at the beginning of the podcast. That's, if David Wyatt goes away and no longer becomes a patron, I will still cover Walkabout Mini Golf. And that's true of, what is it, Jigsaw Night and what is Steve Lucas down there in the comments was saying that Jigsaw Night is on sale right now. That is a really, really cool puzzling app if you haven't seen it. He's also a patron. If he cancels his patron,
Hello again, folks. You should now be able to hear me. I've moved to Horizon Workrooms. We're having, as I mentioned in the live chat, an upstream issue with our server provider for the studio, so we're not going to be able to continue in that today, but we will be continuing in here. Now, this is going to be a little bit more challenging as I don't have my notes in here easily accessible, but I should still be able to bring them up now in Workrooms if you'll just stand by. Okay, I'm gonna have to actually.
oh God,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to cut the computer stream because otherwise it'll loop echo. So, hi there, Ian. We should be in here now.
are we live?
Uh, they hear us, but they don't currently see us. Apparently, stand by.
Oh, this is.
Yeah, they should be able to. They should be able to see us now. Can you please confirm? I mean, I see it on the YouTube stream. I think there's a little bit of a flicker sometimes, but I'll keep this open. They should be able to hear us.
All right, let's pull up. Oh, okay. Now I can see our new avatars. So, hello everyone. This is Ian Hamilton from the UploadVR studios. No, that doesn't even apply anymore. Hello, everyone. Let's get back out of the menu here.
Yeah, this is going to be a challenge here in terms of how we pull this off.
Okay, let's see how an ad just came up for me on my pass through. What a fantastic experience.
An ad came up on your pass-through for what?
Well, all right. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to part 2 of this week's VR download with current generation Meta avatars for the first time. So this is what Meta's provided, and we are in Horizon Workrooms beta, Meta Horizon Workrooms beta. I think that's its name right now. And I have a portal floating right in front of me that is allowing me to see into my environment. So I can see my laptop down here, and down on there on that laptop is where I'm watching our stream, and I can see that what we look like up there. I can also keep an eye on comments, catch up with everyone who was watching us a few minutes ago. Yeah, are we back up? Are we having a lot of people tuning in again? Are they coming back to us? Are they weirded out? I can't see the comments well enough yet.
Yeah, so I can't because I can't bring this up while I'm streaming. We're using a creative solution here where we're in workrooms and I have a second Meta account that is connecting from my PC. But if I then bring up my PC in workrooms, which is the primary purpose, I'll just get audio echo and also it'll rescale everything. So I'm just gonna have to wing it. I think I know what our topics are here. I can kind of barely see my physical notes. So let's just move on to our next topic. We'd love to do this in the studio and be able to show you our um, images. Unfortunately, we aren't going to be able to do that today, so we're just going to have to roll with it. So our next topic is that Pico 4 Ultra now has enhanced quality tracking, body tracking with 5 Pico trackers, and it also got a travel mode. So the travel mode, you should know what that is by now. On Apple Vision Pro and Quest, it lets you use the headset in a moving vehicle, such as on a plane or a train. It makes the positional tracking work. Before travel mode, if you ever tried to use your headset on a plane or a train, everything would kind of drift off into infinity when the plane started moving. If there was turbulence, everything would shake. If even the bearing changed, all your windows would fly away, all your virtual objects. So travel mode, Apple Vision Pro introduced it at launch. There were a lot of people that didn't think it was possible in the industry. I remember arguing with a former Oculus engineer who told me it was impossible and we must have misheard Apple and there's no way that they could pull off positional tracking on a plane. So I'm not trying to gloat, but at the same time, that's why you got to be careful about the kind of argument to authority thing. They're very intelligent and experienced people who can be wrong about things. So that came to Quest a few months later. It's now on Pico. But the most interesting part of the Pico OS update is the new 5 Pico tracker mode. So if you're not familiar, Pico trackers are essentially like a touch controller, but without thumbsticks and buttons and triggers. They have the little IR LEDs. They have, a little chip for communicating with the headset wirelessly. At launch, you could buy 2 of them for somewhere around, 50 to 70 quid. I don't have my notes in front of me. And you strap them on your ankles and you got leg tracking. Then earlier this year, Pico introduced the waist version, which is a single tracker you could buy that has a longer strap that goes around your waist. So now, if you had combined those 3, you would have a tracker around your waist and 2 around your ankles for kind of primitive body tracking for quite a low cost, completely standalone, no base stations. And these things are really light. They're 27 grams. They run for 25 hours. They're very convenient, very well made product. You have to kind of give it to Pico for that. So what's the news here? The news here is that they now have the ability to buy a second pair. So to be clear, you would now have 2 pairs of the regular trackers, as in 4 in total. You still strap 2 around your ankles. You still then add the waist version around your waist, but you can add these extra 2 around either your forearms or your ankles. For your ankles, it will give you better leg tracking, high fidelity leg tracking for things like dancing and kicking and fitness titles. It'll also then be able to go on your wrists if you want for better arm tracking. So the immediate question we have here on this show, we're always talking about the future, what's next, what's coming after is, are they going to have a 7 tracker mode where you can get all of these things together? And it's still, these 5 trackers, this total cost is around £200. So this is less than the price of 2 Vive trackers for 5 Pico trackers, and they have much longer battery life, and they're lighter and kind of more practical. Um,
Love this. All right, I'm reading the comments here, and there's LL saying that is anyone else unable to get past how uncanny it is having their avatars completely change? I can't even hear David right now. It feels like an alien looking over his body and controls his voice. And you've got a little beard there. And I know what you look like in real life too. So I also have that point of comparison our audience doesn't have. So the whiplash is real. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last time I was playing with this meta avatar editor was for the story about the enhanced body and face customization. So to be honest with you, I was just mucking around with the settings. So I'm sure I look quite strange right now. It was for that story that we put out about the meta avatar customization. So I have no idea where I left it, but
It's
I was
just
playing with the sliders to report on it. So I don't know. Yeah, though I think we really needed to commend Pico here. A lot of Quest enthusiasts would love to have this feature. They would love to have this product, Pico trackers. They would love to have meta trackers, Quest trackers, and Pico's pulling it off. And this works on standalone in VR chat. You can literally, without a PC, buy a Pico headset, in Europe, get 200 quid worth of trackers and have pretty good body tracking in VR chat. It also works on PC via either Pico Connect or Guy Godin's virtual desktop. I haven't seen Guy Godin in our comments today. Perhaps he's not available on Fridays. Only maybe he's a Thursday guy, um, but it is possible to do that. He's added that to his Pico version of virtual desktop, so you can use them on PC in VR chat as well. And it also works standalone in things like Blade and Sorcery, Nomad. There's a few fitness games as well. I think like one of the tennis games. This is something that Meta CTO Andrew Bosworth has repeatedly said, however, is not going to come to the Quest ecosystem. He's not interested in doing it. Okay. Do we want to then move on to talk about this PlayStation VR eye tracking news?
No, I want to compare the audio quality that we have in Horizon World to the audio quality that you built in our other studio and tell you that I'm annoyed that there's ambient like nature sounds, but also it feels like the 3D audio in here is a little bit better than you have over there.
Ian, I've told you this many times. We don't have 3D audio in our build. We haven't for like a
Yeah.
year. It had to be taken out for tech reasons. So it's better because we don't have 3D audio anymore. We did for years. We would love to be able to work on that again. But yeah, look, I think we want to get on to talk about this next topic. I would love to sit and talk about Horizon Workrooms. It's very blurry, I have to say. The resolution, render resolution
I'm
here.
gonna have to plug in my laptop in order to keep an eye on the comments. So go ahead. What's the next subject? I have the next subject here somewhere. It's the eye tracking one, right?
Yes. So PlayStation VR 2 on PC. You can now use the eye tracking. Huge news. Last year, obviously, Sony brought PlayStation VR 2 to PC officially with their official adapter. There are some third-party adapters now. If you have a certain very small, narrow series of 20 series NVIDIA cards, you don't even need the adapter. But Sony put out that Steam VR driver, but it was missing and is still missing officially some of the standout features: eye tracking, HDR, adaptive triggers, precision haptics, headset rumble. It's all missing. The standout features. It's just a bare bones PC VR headset. Well, now open source developers have brought PlayStation VR 2's standout capabilities, or at least some of them, to PC by modding Sony's driver. So you can find the link to this on GitHub in our article. We've linked to it. You can find it there quite easily. Eye tracking is obviously the main feature there, as well as the adaptive triggers. The eye tracking right now is only usable in VR chat. It's not piped through to OpenXR, so you can't use it for foveated rendering. However, that is the top of their roadmap. This development team of 3 open source developers, they're doing this for free. They're not being paid. It's not a paid product, obviously. So it's amazing that they pulled this off at all. I tried it very, very briefly. It works well in VR chat. I'm very excited to see this come to OpenXR because then you can use it in Microsoft Flight Simulator, DCS. And I think someone emailed us just before we went on the show about a new PC VR game getting support for dynamic foveated rendering. I can't remember what it was, but we'll definitely report on it when we get to it.
Yep. Big day. David was mentioning the 20 series graphics cards. I haven't moved on from the 20 series graphics card yet. I'm still on that, and what's remarkable about it is I can feel the urge to build a PC brewing building day by day. It's like I don't know if you're anything like me, please let me know what it's like in the comments for you to have this experience of just feeling that itch of just I think I need a new PC. I think it's time, and I don't know when it's going to be in like the next 6 months to 2 years that I start assembling the pieces or whatever, but it's finally time to like get serious about moving up to a new graphics card and thinking about what my home destination looks like that I see everyone visit. I noticed Casey Chiefs out in our comments, and the thing about Casey Chiefs is I've seen you in our comments a lot of times asking for our new avatars. So it's remarkable to see you pop up the moment we moved to these new avatars in Horizon Workrooms. Basically, this is what you've wanted for a really long time. I have fingernails now. This is really un. David doesn't want to talk about this right now. Okay. All right, let's move on to talk
Not
about
that I don't
boba and
want to talk about
tiramisu.
it. It's just it is 9 p.m. in the UK, so I do want to get to this at some point.
Well,
Um,
Casey Chiefs is excited. I'm excited too for them. All right, let's talk about these crazy VR headsets and let you rest for the weekend, okay?
yeah, okay. So I really wanted to have visual assets here, but you can just go to uploadvr.com and see it for yourself. So Boba 3, ultra wide field of view in a practical form factor. Tiramisu, hyperrealistic VR. Let's talk about Boba 3 first. So Boba 3, putting it on immediately, I smiled. I couldn't help myself. This, unlike all of the other meta research prototypes we've seen, it felt like a complete headset. It is visually, from a kind of optics perspective, very similar to Quest 3 in terms of the optical feel of the lenses and the sharpness and clarity, except it's a little higher resolution. And of course, the, saving the most for last here, it engulfs your entire field of view or 90% of your field of view. And this was striking. I've tried very, very wide horizontal before, but I've never tried a combination of very wide horizontal and vertical, and never with this optical clarity. So, as I say in the article, when I first tried the DK1 back in 2013, just like many other people, I was amazed. And by today's standards, DK1, the Oculus Dev Kit 1, it's a dinosaur. It's got awful resolution, motion blur, no positional tracking, but yet so many people that tried DK1 said, wow, I feel like I'm in another place. Why is that? Because the field of view was still there. It's the field of view that makes you feel like you're somewhere else in VR. And that's what has stagnated for about 10 years in mainstream products. We've seen very small increases recently with Quest 3. We've got about a 10 degrees increase. But fundamentally, if you had asked someone back in the DK1 days where they thought VR was going, they obviously would have spoken about the resolution, right? DK1 had such low angular resolution that it was equivalent to being legally blind. But they also would have said, I'm sure it'll engulf your entire field of view. This is still kind of like this binocular effect. Now, that's an exaggeration when people say that. Binoculars have a very small field of view, depending on the binoculars, 20, 30, 40, 50 degrees. VR is obviously a lot wider than that. But fundamentally, you want it to engulf your field of view. I wish I could have taken Boba 3 home. Uh, if I could, it would be my PC VR daily driver. There's no other prototype I can say that about, right? When it came to
C-
Meta's
Can
Starburst,
let me
sorry,
speak there. Like
sure.
that's a significant statement for him to say. Like that he's just choosing his words carefully there. He and that's important for me to call out because other people don't, right? Like and I just needed to take that moment. Go ahead, keep going, David.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is important, right? Because Starburst, which we tried, both of us tried in 2022, really high brightness, amazing, but it was enormous, comically large, literally held by cables, and you had to hold it to your head. So that's not a real headset. It's a demonstration of one aspect. Butterscotch Varifocal. I tried it, right? Varifocal and Retinal, 2023 SIGGRAPH. Great, but 50-degree field of view, really heavy and bulky, not practical. Amazing for what it is, not a headset that is actually complete. It's not meant to be. Those are research prototypes pushing one specific aspect. But what amazed me about Boba 3 um, is that it is a research prototype pushing field of view, but it doesn't sacrifice anything else that mattered. There are a couple of trade-offs. The eye box was slightly less wide, but in a weird way where it wasn't that when you moved your eye out of alignment with the center of the lens that the blurriness would increase, not significantly at least, other than if you moved it far away. It was the brightness. So you could, if you misaligned one eye because this had per eye IPD adjustment, you would actually get this really weird feeling where the brightness of one eye was different than the other, and this kind of brightness disparity was uncomfortable.
It's
But
really bad. That's
yeah,
a really that's a get out of VR real quick
sure.
feeling.
But to be clear, this is when I intentionally adjusted one eye PD on one eye wrong to see what would happen, because that's obviously what I do when I test these headsets. So, you know, that is not to me a huge deal breaker. Everything else, this thing has angular resolution that is just a little bit better than Quest 3, so it's not compromising on resolution. The difficulty would be driving it. It doesn't have eye tracking, so you would need a 5090, and that's what they used here. You know what? I don't have a 5090, but if I had pulled off a heist and brought Boba 3 across the Atlantic, I would have got a 5090 for this. This confirms what I've been saying for years, that field of view is the fundamental driver of immersion in
I
VR.
would have gotten a 5090 for this. That's an
Yeah,
important statement. Yeah. I mean, it's a very important statement about where it's a statement to all of those people out there who have been complaining about Meta not doing what they wanted for a long time, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, look, let's be clear. Meta is not going to ship this because you need a 5090 to drive it, right? Eye tracked foveated rendering could help. Neural upscaling could help. They're not magic, okay? You're still going to need a high-end PC. And you may be wondering why. Why am I saying that this needs a high-end PC? Because the more you increase the field of view of a headset, the more higher resolution you need to render to get the same angular resolution, the same pixels per degree. But it's worse than that, because when you have a wider field of view, more geometry is in view. This could not be a huge issue if you're in a very low density scene, an indoor sparse scene. But if you're in a high detail scene, if you're outdoors in an open world, this is going to kill your performance. Imagine having to render everything within a 180 by 120 degree field of view. It's just, it's not going to happen on a mobile chipset anytime soon. So that Andrew Bosworth has been clear about this. He doesn't think that it's worth it. I understand his position. If you are working within the constraints of we have to ship a mobile chipset headset, it does make sense. Every increase in field of view means you have to fight harder on resolution. All of these things trade off against each other. It's a challenge. But if Meta did want to make a PC VR headset, they could ship this thing. There's no reason that it couldn't. And I want to be clear why I'm saying that. Boba 3 is not Orion, the unshippable AR glasses prototype. It doesn't use exotic materials. It doesn't use, curved panels, tiled panels. This is pretty much the pancake lenses of Quest 3, but with kind of a reflective layer added on. The manufacturing process is very similar. A polarized reflector. So the other thing is the panels are just 4K LCDs. They're the same kind you would find in Vario XR4, in Pimax, Crystal Super. I don't want to come up with an exact figure of what it would cost Meta to ship this as a product. That's obviously going to just be layman speculation. But we're not talking like the Orion $10,000 thing. We're talking like, $1,500 or something like that. And that would be, that's a complete guess. But that's the kind of range we're talking about here if they wanted to ship this as a product.
So, Steve, I respect David's point of view on field of view, but all the tweets I saw on X from Brad preferred Tiramisu. When you look at a headset, you have to consider brightness, field of view, resolution, and the list. There's a list of about like a dozen other things after that you consider. And when you look at a future-facing VR headset, something that isn't going to ship for 5 years, 10 years, the guy that runs the display research division was showing headsets at SIGGRAPH in the early part of the 2010s, right? When Palmer Luckey and all of that were in another room showing off the very first Rift prototypes. Douglas Landman, is showing off a different prototype in a different room of a different headset and a different model that never ever shipped, right? We're not getting it anytime soon. But it proved out a concept that helped us where we are today. And so when David comes back and starts talking to us about these things, most of these things are proving out different concepts. And critically, this first one that you're talking about proves out a really critical concept, right? And what is that concept?
It's that you can deliver ultra wide field of view without massive significant trade-offs to the form factor. So, Meta CTO Andrew Bosworth, he said these four things that were restricting Meta from shipping an ultra wide headset: compute and thermals. That's not going away. I've just addressed why it isn't. about it. The other
But
issue that he
I
had
want
years ago. Sorry, just to finish this, was
Yeah, go
weight,
ahead.
weight and form factor, and those are
Yeah.
gone. But let's just kind of address what he said, because the kind of statement there was, I respect your view, but someone else has a different view. Of course they will. Someone else liked tiramisu more. Okay, I'll talk about tiramisu now. Um, I think it depends on what you care about. But sorry, continue. You say what you're going to say, and then we can talk about
Oh
tiramisu.
no, it was just a stupid idea that I'm going to bring up, but I have to bring it up because there was someone else that's saying you don't want a 5090 if you're in the summer, and it's like, yes, I mean my 2080 and it's madness. My 2080 has moved around my house to multiple rooms, and I've moved into the room with the air conditioner and that's how I've arrived at the solution of Ethernet running into each room. And the random stupid thought was, has anyone tried to build a graphics card into a window unit and used the same principles of moving the hot air outside that they use in an air conditioner? But I don't know. I want an air conditioner that's a PC built in is where I'm going with that.
Yeah, I think I did see something like that before, where they were using it for heat the other way around. Certainly would be interesting if it was possible. Um, but yeah, let's talk about tiramisu then, because it's obviously just being brought up, and people are very interested in that. I've actually just seen that our upstream server provider has told me that their server issues are fixed. So we're going to go back into the studio, and we can bring up visual
Wait,
assets
let
and
me
see
hear
my
you one
notes.
more time. Can you say something like skeletal while we're in
I
here and I hear 3D audio?
skeletal.
All right,
Okay.
thank you, David. All right.
Hello again, folks. It's so nice to be back here with our notes. Let me just unpin that comment there about the upstream server provider. You should be able to hear and see me now in the way the way I'm meant to be seen. Yeah. So let us know there, folks, if you can hear us now, and we can actually get back to things. So, unfortunately, there was nothing we could do about that. As I said, it was an issue with our upstream server provider. We kind of made do with what we could. Now that we're here, though, I can bring up some visual assets and really talk more about this. So here is the VR variant of Boba 3 without the pass-through cameras. This is probably going to take a while to load. Here it is. You can see that the form factor here is not significantly different than a Quest 3. The difference is the lenses. You may say, oh, but a Quest 3 has compute on board. The mixed reality variant of Boba 3 does have an FPGA on board, so there wouldn't be any more kind of form factor difference there. But it would have to have a battery. What I wanted to bring up, and I'm really glad that we're back in the studio now, I can bring it up quite easily, is kind of some charts that maybe illustrate better what we're talking about when it comes to these trade-offs. So let's firstly just show the field of view difference so you understand what we're talking about here. So this is actually for Boba 2, but it's very, very similar. You can see here Quest 3. And then in this red area, you can see the display width here. So you're getting this greatly increased vertical field of view below and the horizontal field of view. And I need to be clear that in the headset, the difference is so much more dramatic than these charts would make clear. Here's a better image that compares the form factor of these two headsets, showing that there really isn't that much difference. In person, these are really quite similar footprint. It's not that there's no form factor trade-off at all. It would maybe add, 100 grams to deliver something like this in a shipping product compared to Quest 3 level field of view. But I think that's well worth it when you think of the kind of massive engulfing immersion that you get here. And I just really want to stress that I'm sitting in a Quest 3S right now, and I can't stop thinking about the field of view that I'm missing from this Boba experience. So you can see here, Quest 3's optical stack size compared to Boba 3. You're only very slightly increasing it. and obviously the depth is a little bit different, but all of that can be adjusted with the headset design. You're adding a little bit more weight, but look at the dramatic difference in that field of view. The real innovation of Boba 3, to be clear here, for anyone not understanding what is the actual breakthrough here, is that they've managed to deliver this ultra-wide field of view in this similar form factor. So you can see here, Boba 1 did not do this. It uses lenses and optics and displays from 9 years ago. Boba 3 has. This is the same kind of rough form factor you get in headsets of today, but with an ultra-wide field of view. And cool stuff about the ergonomics, as well as having this per-eye IPD adjustment and eye relief adjustment, it also flips up. So you can flip Boba 3. This is the VR variant without pass-through cameras. You can flip it up, and this would be, I'd love to see them. They're not going to release it, let's be clear, but I would love to see them release Boba 3 VR as well without the pass-through cameras for developers, and you could, flip it up if you wanted to.
Did you get a chance to talk to any of the meta researchers about whether the scale of research continues at the same level that it has in the past for future plays?
Yes, I did. I kind of asked, are there like cost cuts going on here? Do you have kind of a scale down? And, they indicated no. They suggested that they are, they just hired a bunch of people. They're still working full steam ahead on this stuff. And one interesting thing that they did hint at is that they're now kind of working more closely in some ways with product teams. And, there's certain things from DSR that are now starting to trickle down into future products. And obviously they wouldn't say anything about specifics, but it does seem like Oculus Research is what this used to be called, Reality Labs Research now. It's been going for around 10 years. You do see some of their stuff kind of trickle into products in more minor ways, but I think over the next 5 to 10, 15 years, we're going to start seeing some of the ideas from Meta Display Systems Research and this sister team that we're going to talk about with Tiramisu start to trickle down into real products.
So Mr. Mycelium was asking, wonder why they decided to show these off. And David has mentioned many times that Meta tends to show these off to draw in researchers. It show them that they're sort of working on the very cutting edge of technology, and if that's where you want to be, that this is the place to be. But I also think that there's something a little bit more important being said by David's answer just now about them hiring and them showing this off. Quest Pro shipped with an open periphery. And then Meta renamed its entire virtual reality division Mixed Reality and made clear that they were aiming for that whole space, right? Not just VR. But when you go to a field of view this large, is open periphery still a thing? Do you still want open periphery, and is there any value to it? Or do you want immersion a lot more? Do you need to block out the outside world? I wonder about, we've gone back and forth a little bit about how many types of headset lines we'll see in the future. Are we going to see mixed reality headsets, and is there a line that's just VR headsets and they don't have all the best cameras on the outside? Is that a thing? I don't know. And when I look at this, I wonder about the model for the future. Can you talk about those? Do you still want blinders on there to keep yourself immersed?
Yeah, so I said before, I think that no headset that is not open periphery will go mainstream. You need to have the sides of the headset open for regular people to want to use it, because otherwise it'll smush against their face. For women,
even at this wide field of view?
Sorry?
Even at this ultra high field of view?
I'm about to answer. So it makes it just as important, because you're still going to see out the very edges the real world and lose that immersion for VR. For mixed reality, I think it all still applies. The one thing I think relates to the open periphery and mixed reality with Boba is how necessary, let me rephrase this, how impressive the mixed reality was. So that the VR I saw in Boba 3 was incredibly impressive, because you've never seen all of your periphery filled out like this, with only the tiniest bit on the edge missing, right? You can see human vision here in green. You're only missing a little bit on the edges and the tiniest sliver below. But in mixed reality, it's not quite as impressive, because I already do have open periphery at home, right? So I see the real world in my periphery at home. Yes, you don't see the mixed reality virtual objects there, but it wasn't quite as impressive there. It also wasn't depth correct pass through. So that's just a limitation of the scope and time of the project rather than anything intentional or any kind of fundamental limitation going on here. So I think the last thing I want to say on Boba, just before we move on to Tiramisu, is that just because I don't think Meta is going to turn around tomorrow and start shipping a 180-degree headset, it doesn't mean that they won't use the fundamental approach here to ship wider. There's a lot of room between 110 and 180. And even with the compute issues here, maybe we see another Quest in a couple of years move up to 120, 130, 140. As long as there's steady progress here, that's what I like to see. Now, when it comes to your question of will we see these different devices? Yes, but I don't think the differentiation will be around mixed reality and VR. I think everything Meta ever ships will be mixed reality. They've called this like their kind of fundamental feature set. But I think it will instead be around form factor. I think we will see two lines of headsets, one that is for being as light and thin as possible with this external compute that is trying to be like VR glasses, ideally one day, that in eventually 15, 20 years' time is like putting on a thick pair of sunglasses, but it's giving you a full VR experience in a limited field of view, maybe 100 degrees. But then simultaneously, you're going to have a product line that does try to push for this deeper and greater immersion, because at the end of the day, you're not going to get this thing down to 100 grams anytime this century. Well, that's maybe an exaggeration. But if you have the right head strap, you're okay with the fact that this isn't going to go against a couch or a bed. I think the value of immersion here is worth it. That's what I really want to get across from Boba. Full field of view is incredible. I miss it. I hate that I don't have it right now. I want it so bad. I wish I'd stolen one.
It's going to be true. And I think that's what, so back in the other place, when I was talking about the other opinions, right? You talk about brightness. Once you experience full brightness, like 20,000 nits, you're going to, what? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, let's talk about Tiramisu then. If you're going to talk about brightness,
there's brightness in there.
Yeah.
Just go ahead. And on this, I guess before we go, do you see a model for? Well, all right. Two things on the last thing you said. If you think there's mixed reality and form factor, neither of those headset lines you just described for the future resemble the Quest.
Well, I think the wider field of view one does. I think that's the traditional Quest. Over time, you take the Quest 3, you go to wider, higher resolution, eye tracking. You take the fundamental approach. It's still a headset. Maybe you include the Elite strap. I think with the Xbox edition of Quest 3S, there's a definite experiment there of what happens when you include the Elite strap. And I think you do get this kind of form factor that it is more of a kind of a helmet, a thing that you put on over your whole head. That's the highly immersive form factor that keeps going in its own direction. And then simultaneously, you have this new form factor emerge that tries to be like glasses, tries to have nothing on the back of your head, ideally, just strap arms onto your ears. And I think these are divergent things. I think some people want the value of mixed reality, but they prefer the portability, and some people want the greatest immersion possible.
But I mean, that's fast. Now we're going to be arguing about the future of the Quest line very, very quickly here, and it's going to form the base of a lot of conversations out there of, is the Quest line dead, or is it this, and it's just a really far away?
I think it splits into two. I think you get a Quest Prime and a Quest Air, completely random names I'm just making up to illustrate the point. I think you get two divergent lines from here. I don't think you can keep doing this jack of all trades approach like they're doing so far. I think you need headsets that are optimized for compactness and comfort, and headsets that are prioritized for immersion. I think you can't do both in one. It's impossible.
But do either of them have a battery strapped to your face, sir?
I mean, I think no. I think this one puts it on the back of your head, like Quest Pro, and like Pico 4, and the compact one puts it in your pocket. An external compute. I agree with you that you don't want that in either case. You want to keep this one, the immersive one, balanced, and then you want to keep the Quest Air or whatever the hell you want to call it. You want to just take all the weight off your head completely and allow you to lie back on a chair or a bed.
So, what if Meta? We need to go talk about the last one, but it's such an important headset. I hate to rush us off of it now that I'm getting into it. But If you're going to require a battery pack or a wire for each of these designs, what does that say about the choices Apple made over the course of 15 years of entering this market, right? And what does it say about the choices Meta made in strapping a battery to your face for the last 6 years?
I mean, look, I think there's two advantages to the battery in your face. Cost, firstly, it's so much cheaper to just build the Quest 3 design where everything is just in one unit. And that's how you get $300 and $500 headsets. And the other advantage there is that you can have versatility. Nobody gives Meta credit enough for the fact that they are entirely modular when it comes to the strap. So many other headsets. Pico 4, if the strap is built in, you can't take it apart. Apple Vision Pro, you kind of can, but Apple doesn't really make it that easy. When it comes to Quest, you can put on whatever strap you want. You can have the battery strap. You can have the one that is just fabric on the back of your head. The versatility there that's offered by the Quest ecosystem is unmatched. I just think you have to maybe perhaps lean into one. You either have to go full on with the Apple Vision Pro approach of take the battery off the head. Ironically, they didn't do it while increasing weight, but that's specific to Apple. Or you just accept that the battery's on there, put it in the back like Quest Pro, and optimize something like this for full immersion, for using flight simulators, for using room scale VR. And you can't have both, right? The jack of all trades approach. Maybe you get three. Maybe you do still have a Quest that's the low cost. Maybe you have one that's the middle. I think just the one thing I want to stress here is we have a bunch of different form factors when it comes to laptops, when it comes to a bunch of other devices, cars, right? Not everybody is trying to make one form factor of car. Some people have a pickup truck. Some people have a super compact. Some people have a big SUV. Some people have a saloon. You have to optimize for things. Some people have a motorbike, right? You can't try to put all of these categories, whether it be laptops or vehicles, into one omni thing, or else you get, the car built for Homer from The Simpsons that tries to be everything at once.
It's fast. There's a lot of things we can talk about this, but there's a guy, there's someone on Reddit that I've been trying to get in contact with, but they post these videos of themselves in an Apple Vision Pro crawling below houses and installing cord jacks to cut through walls and stuff. And it seems like such a no-brainer benefit to so many hands-on jobs to have a mixed reality guide in front of you, no matter what you're doing. And when you have this kind of helmet thing that you're describing, why not go the whole distance and put yourself in a hazmat suit and use it in situations where you're literally protecting yourself from the physical environment for various reasons, whether it's bugs or environmental things. And now you've got this amazing addition of mixed reality on the other side.
Yeah, I do think there's huge potential for enterprise here. Like, Meta is so focused on consumers, but I think this thing enterprise would kill for this. Like the people that buy Vario XR4s and
Enterprise would
headsets like
kill for
that.
this. Choose your words carefully, because this is that's where I'm going with this. This feels military. It feels like this has military uses.
It could. This would be this. I mean, one of the demos they had here was a flight simulator, right? One of the software demos, and I'm in a cockpit, and I've got my standard Quest 3 field of view. Throughout this, I could press a button at any time to toggle between the Boba field of view and the Quest 3 simulated field of view. So I could literally toggle, and every time I'm just like, why would I ever want the Quest 3 field of view? Of course. But in a flight simulator, there's so many of these practical advantages of what you can actually see around you. And I bring this up in the article, but it's not just about immersion, this field of view. You're in a meeting. Instead of having to turn your head, I'm looking just here, and I can't see Ian anymore because of the field of view of this headset. So if he's gesturing to me or making a body language, I'm in a virtual meeting room. I can't see the other people. Triple monitors. You can have your triple monitor set up or your ultra wide in this headset, Boba, and see all of them at once. You don't have to turn your head. You can be aware if there's a notification that pops up here, something's changed on what you're monitoring over here. There are practical advantages to field of view. In a video game, you're going to see the enemy come up to the side of you instead of having to constantly turn around like this. So people that don't get the advantage of field of view, even if you somehow don't believe the immersion factor, trust me, you will if you try it. There are so many little practical advantages. A 180-degree video, you can literally sit there comfortably and watch the whole damn thing without moving your head. And that comes to a new comfort factor that I haven't heard discussed much, which is that you can make a headset as slim and light as possible. But if it is a limited field of view, you need to turn your head all the time. So even if it's light, you're taking this kind of physical stress compared to what you might sit back on a couch and watch traditional TV or something, of moving your head. With Boba, I can sit there and keep my head still and see everything in view in a virtual concert, in a virtual sports game. And you can pan your head ever so slightly and move your eyes, because this is pancake lenses. It's sharp around. You can turn with your eyes. So many practical advantages to kind of field of view in terms of peripheral awareness, in terms of object permanence, knowing that an object has changed state. Because yes, your peripheral vision is low resolution in real life, of course, but it's still there. I can still see that people are moving around me. No one's going to sneak up on you in real life. If I'm in a, this is one of the problems with VR shooters today. It's so deeply unrealistic to have someone be able to sneak up on you in any kind of multiplayer combat game, because in real life you would just see them in your peripheral vision. And there's some shooters have experimented with like showing like a UI hint on the side of your rendered field of view or something like that. But how unimmersive is that? So I'm a big stickler for field of view, but I think we needed to move on to talk about Tiramisu, because there's a lot of interest in that too.
Yep, and I think when we get to that one, we'll break down why we spent so much time talking about this. I think we will return to Boba 3 over time. It's a name that you should know. Go read David's article, his massive breakdown of this. Try to grok it and understand it. David has done some of the best reporting. He has done some of the best reporting on this. So, I don't expect you to find anything deeper or covering the depth that he does on this headset. And then we're going to be talking about this for years to come. And one of the things that gets me, David, is this audience, the people who tune into our show are already believers. They've already seen the light. They know the path is here, but their ability to describe that to everyone else is extremely, like, they need your tools. They need us to help explain why, yeah, right now you can't see the periphery, and that's a huge limitation, but everything is there, right? The path is all in front of us. And I saw some commenter out there saying, 15 years, who knows what the battery technology will be? And that's an interesting concept, but
Yes.
it doesn't actually hold up to the real world. The companies, Meta needs to be building now the batteries that they will need in the mid 2030s. They need to be investing in some form of it, right? Whether it's a small amount or a large amount, they have to be building now for the stuff that they're going to need that far in the future. Apple is doing the same thing. And so we can actually, if we'll take good, long, hard looks like we're doing here, we can actually start peering into the future a little bit. And yeah, so let's not talk about the next one, David.
Yeah, which on the battery thing, people are always hoping that the solid state battery revolution is going to start any year now. There's a meme in electric car enthusiast circles that next year Toyota will start producing its solid state battery electric car, because they announce every year that they're about to do it. If it happens, great. But as Ian says, these companies can't bet on it. Yes, lithium ion batteries are increasing in energy density every year, but gradually. There is unlikely to be one day where we just get like an order of magnitude increase in energy density. If it happened, it would revolutionize the industry. It would change a lot of the factors we're talking about here, but it's very, very unlikely to happen.
Mestora's caught up with us, so thank you for Mestora's for jumping across realities for us. I saw the comment earlier noting that we just casually slipped across the metaverse during the course of the show, and you got a glimpse of the next generation avatars. I love the people happy that we came home here. But I love Mestora's saying here, as an Apple Vision Pro owner who paid half at retail, which was cool, I'll look to get the M5 Apple Vision Pro, and they assume it will also have Wi-Fi 6E or 8 or 7 and the AV1 codec, which is what they're looking for. So back an hour ago, that's a person who's actually in our audience responding to that prompt.
Yeah, Vision Pro, as I've said before, was meant to come out in 2022. So it still has Wi-Fi 6, not even 6E, doesn't have 6 gigahertz. So that will actually be a huge upgrade for Vision Pro 2. And we should have pointed that out. This great point. The Wi-Fi leap there from base 6 to 7, enormous. Bluetooth and things as well. Vision Pro was meant to come out in 2022. It got very delayed. It came out in 2024. It's actually older than it seems. So let's just finish Boba by saying again, it has me more optimistic than ever about the future of VR, because I think field of view is the fundamental driver of immersion. However, I didn't think it would be possible to deliver field of view at ultra wide in a headset that didn't look like this. But now Meta's optical scientists have proven that you can deliver it in a headset that looks like this. And that has me optimistic, even if Meta executives don't want to ship it. Let's now talk about Tiramisu, the other prototype that Meta showed. It's so thick and heavy that it doesn't even have a strap. You hold it up to your face. It is, as you can see, using the repurposed Quest 2 tracking system. What this headset shows is a very narrow field of view, only 33 degrees, tiny. But within that 33 degrees of vision, I saw the most realistic image I've ever seen. And I don't just mean VR. I mean in any display system of any kind. This combined beyond retinal resolution, 90 pixels per degree, with ultra high brightness, sorry, not ultra high brightness, with high brightness and high contrast. 14 times the brightness of Quest 3 and 3 times the contrast. This is a very interesting chart from Meta, showing that these optics have better pupil swim, the display and optic system, better contrast, and the peak brightness. This is a really great chart of showing you the difference. However, this is not a varifocal system, so it's still got similar depth of focus. So here's an image showing the difference in the optical stack between Quest 3 and Tiramisu. So what is this thing? Fundamentally, what is it? So firstly, it comes from a different team at Meta, not DSR. It comes from Opals, Optics, Photonics, and Light Systems, a sister team of DSR. So they had a suspicion that the industry was wrong about something. When I say they, I mean Meta's researchers for the past 10 years. It is always said, and we've said it, that it's generally accepted that 60 pixels per degree is retinal resolution, human eye resolution. But this is just something that people say, and it hadn't really been proven. I did try 2 years ago at SIGGRAPH a retinal resolution prototype of 56 pixels per degree, but this is 90. And it turns out Meta's researchers figured out, by proving it out in Tiramisu, that 60 is not the limit because they can see the difference between 60 and 90. So it turns out that retinal resolution is going to be harder to achieve. That's not to say there aren't diminishing returns. The 56 I saw 2 years ago looked stunningly incredible. There was no aliasing, no shimmering. It was great. I don't think anyone's going to complain, but you can go even more realistic if you want to really push. And that's one of the things Tiramisu does. So, on a tech level, these are very, very different than Quest 3. In fact, they are not pancake lenses. They're refractive optics. 3 elements made of high refractive index flint glass, so heavy and expensive glass, not plastic. Meta claims these elements correct almost all geometric and chromatic aberrations. They are correct. I saw this with my own eyes. Each element is custom made with anti-reflective coatings, which enhance the contrast and maximize the brightness. So this uses a micro OLED display, but unlike Apple Vision Pro and Quest 3, it doesn't use pancake lenses, so it doesn't kill off most of the brightness. So you get significantly more of that brightness from the display actually reaching your eyes. Let's bring up the chart here that should give a good illustration of the trade-offs here. So with Quest 3, you get a normal field of view, brightness of only 100 nits, and the pancake lenses are about 23 millimeters thick. You get 25 pixels per degree. Tiramisu trades off field of view, trades off form factor, but you get 1400 nits. It's thick, but it's high PPD. It was an incredible experience. I really do have to stress that what I saw here was amazing, but it wasn't the detail that blew me away most. It was the brightness and contrast. And Ian can speak to that because he has seen very high brightness as well. The combination of these things, the kind of high brightness, the high contrast, and the beyond retinal resolution, truly stunning. So they had beside Tiramisu a Quest 3 running the same exact experience. One of the ones that really struck out to me was the cockpit experience. So again, it's in the cockpit of an aircraft at night sitting on a runway. In Quest 3, all of the little lights on the cockpit look like colored stickers. And you don't really realize that when you're in VR, but it's true, right? In your headset, you're looking at a light. It should be a light source, a virtual LED, a lamp, but it doesn't really look bright, right? Like I'm looking at a light source over here, the red light on our camera. It's a sticker. It looks like a sticker. And your brain picks up on that and thinks this isn't real. In Tiramisu, all of these little lights in the cockpit of this airliner, all of them looked like real light sources shining out at me. And this gave a sense of realism that was beyond what any headset that has this low brightness of Quest 3 could ever pull off. And so that includes Boba 3, by the way. We're going to get into kind of comparisons here, I guess. Boba 3, it's amazing field of view, but it's still that kind of dull, washed out LCD image that you get from all of these headsets that we're used to, like Quest 2 and Quest 3. Tiramisu, tiny sliver of a field of view. It's only 33 by 33, but it was approaching the visual Turing test, essentially very close to photorealistic. It's missing the depth Q of varifocal. I would be fascinated to see if one day they can combine these things into one for a research prototype. But I was really blown away. And I'm talking about this cockpit scene. It's not just the brightness, it's the contrast. The contrast, this is a micro OLED display, so you're getting real true blacks of like the dark areas and kind of the foot area of the cockpit here. And then seeing these little lights and then looking out into the distance and seeing the tiny little light sources of the runway lights as individual details, because not only are they very high resolution, but they have this incredible contrast and brightness. Truly stunning. Another scene was like an outdoor park with a map board, and this map board had a map, obviously, of the whole park with these details of the little contours and river flows and all of these little lines. There was no aliasing. There was no pixelation. These looked like smooth lines, like you would draw, like you would see on a 4K monitor from a distance or something, like lines that are not made of pixels. And it was truly stunning. I really, don't want to detract from the people who think that Tiramisu is net better than Boba, because I understand all this. At the same time, where I said Meta could ship Boba 3 if they wanted to, they could not ship Tiramisu. They would be crazy to. The field of view is tiny. The damn thing is so heavy and bulky that it's almost comical. And it's also expensive. It does use exotic materials. This index, high refractive index, flint glass in 3 elements. However, here is the thickness of this thing, right? It's ridiculous. It looks like what was that TV show that recently, or movie, that mocked VR by having a giant headset like this? Whatever. I don't know if you remember it, Ian, but whatever that was, it looks like someone mocking VR.
Community. It looks like the Community headset, yeah.
Exactly. And you can't even kind of hold it up. All that said, Meta is working on a future version of this. Opals is working on a future version of this called Tiramisu 2. Tiramisu 2 is about the road to practicality. And I'll bring up the other chart, which kind of did this better. Here we go. It brings the field of view up to 90 degrees, what you would get with the original Oculus Rift. So it's not pushing field of view to crazy levels, but it's acceptable. 90 degrees is kind of the minimum where I would say it's acceptable. I can have a VR experience in that. I can go and play walkabout mini golf with Ian in a 90 degrees headset and have a good time. Yeah, I'm not going to feel enthused about the field of view, but you could ship that. I'm not saying they're going to ship Tiramisu. Let's be crystal clear. I'm just saying you could ship 90 degrees as a headset. But there are some trade-offs here. So it moves to this new lens that is a combination of refractive and diffractive elements, more like what you would have in pre-pancake lens headsets, except it's at roughly pancake thickness. So you get to 26 millimeters compared to 23 for Quest, and you see that the Tiramisu one I tried here is 63. Tiramisu 2 is not being built yet. This is what they're doing next. They also have to trade off, to get to this thickness, some of this brightness. So they actually cut out a lot more brightness and get down to 700 nits. 700 nits is still 7 times brighter than a Quest 3. Still would be very impressive, I think. And also, they've kind of brought the PPD down to 60 instead of 90, but that's already what we all called retinal resolution. It's way beyond your Quest 2. I am very excited to try this if they bring it to SIGGRAPH 2026. I obviously asked, they obviously wouldn't say, but I think this is where it gets interesting as to this question that I see some people in the audience bringing up of what should be the priority for the display systems of VR? Should we go for higher resolution, greater contrast, greater brightness, or should we go for wider field of view? Now, that's a big question. To me today, if you said, would you rather have Tiramisu or Boba 3? Of course I would rather have Boba 3. All of you would, because 33 degrees is silly. But Tiramisu 2 versus Boba 3 would be a much bigger question. What if it's 90 degrees and it still looks very bright and high contrast and high resolution, and I'm seeing this stunning image into a world, but it's not full field of view? That's the comparison that we need to have here. And I think maybe that could challenge my view. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not going to say something about a headset I haven't tried, but I could imagine that I could be very torn between, do I really care about field of view more? Or, will I take 100 nits throughout my whole field of view? Or would I take 700 nits in 90 degrees field of view? I strongly, deeply hope that Meta shows Tiramisu 2 at SIGGRAPH next year, and I can find out the answer to that question.
We will be there. We'll have that coverage if they show it. Please show it, Meta. Meta needs kudos. Meta's research teams deserve kudos for bringing these headsets forward year after year, showing them off to everyone so that we can see the future, so that we can imagine what these things are possible. Of the discussion, I hope Meta researchers are in the comments here, seeing the debate that's happening amongst our commenters who are debating all of these elements, field of view, and they're talking about the trade-offs. And the thing that I'm going to need to get poetic here for a minute, or just give me a minute to make a weird analogy. And we're all enthusiasts here. We all come at this technology with a bit of rose-colored glasses on our faces before we even put the headset on our heads. So when I see people in the comments who say things like, the PPD of the Quest right now is good enough, or it's fine, you're making those comments through the enthusiast's rose-colored glasses. You're experiencing something that, like, our language isn't built for discussing why these things are so limiting. David has been critical for years now. The moment Apple Vision Pro got announced, the moment we started testing out that headset, it made crystal clear that Apple chose to bring its displays above the minimum that you get out of your television sets. So you get 10K, you get 1080p, you get 1080p out of most TVs worldwide, most pictures. You can actually go above that just a little bit inside of an Apple Vision Pro with the benefit of OLED. And so now you've got a starting point for everything you do in that headset, beginning at that resolution. And what's critical, the reason I'm belaboring this point, is if you go into a headset for 2.5 to 3 hours and you sit back and watch a movie, only when you're if the PPD of the headset isn't high enough, every moment that you're watching that movie is less quality than if you were watching it on a 1080p screen. Not only that, but every moment when you're looking away from the screen, when you're just looking around at being where you are, is lower than a 1080p screen. And that's the brokenness in our brains. That's the rose-colored glasses through which we're viewing everything. Something will change about virtual reality when every minute that you spend inside of there is a certain critical threshold on the PPD scale.
Yeah.
When everything you look around, there's a line in Ready Player One that suggests that the lasers being beamed on his eyeballs are better than real life. And we're going to get there with VR, right? Did that make sense to you, David? Is there anything you want to go off on there?
No, I think that makes sense completely. And I think you're right to point out that people that say that 25 PPD is enough on your Quest 3 today, there's 2 points there. Firstly, the one that you brought up, which is very valid, that once you get higher PPD, it unlocks virtual monitors, both for watching a movie, as you say, with high detail, or for productivity. You don't really get that. You can show virtual objects and it's fine, and it's not super aliased at 25 PPD. The other thing is that, yeah, as you say, it also does just make everything look crisper and more real and more appealing. But I would say that, the bigger issue with Quest 3 is the brightness. And you don't really see it until you've tried something brighter. maybe you don't, but I think some part of you does. Some part of you can probably see that the image you're seeing is dull and washed out in a way that it wouldn't be. And I should have said brightness and contrast. I actually want to really just highlight here that for me, the highlight of Tiramisu was the brightness and contrast. Like, yes, the resolution is amazing too, but it was the resolution pair. I tried retinal resolution 2 years ago at 56 ppd. The 90 ppd, it's better, right? I can notice the difference, but it's not like the world-changing difference. The world-changing difference was that they now had combined this retinal with high brightness and high contrast. The butterscotch I tried 2 years ago was regular old brightness. I think the realism that is added by having this brightness and contrast is something that is very difficult to understand until you try it, and I hope that people get to. Douglas Landman, who leads DSR at Meta, had a really good analogy for this, that it's like the first time you ever see a 4K HDR OLED TV. And I think it's even more striking than that. There was something about this Tiramisu image that it looked so real. They had this obviously rendered by a high-end PC with Unreal Engine 5, Nanite, and Lumen, and using photogrammetry scans for these scenes, this outdoor park scene. It was stunning, really, really well done. DLSS upscaling, of course, to get it to be as high detail as possible. It was downright pleasant to look at. That's the other thing. Boba 3 engulfed me, okay? And it was immersive. But it was like the image of Tiramisu was just pleasant to look at in the same way that when you eat something really tasty, it's pleasant to eat. It's like it was just aesthetically pleasing in such a difficult way to kind of put into words. It was joy for the eyes to see such a rich, detailed, high contrast, high brightness image.
David, you're struggling to describe seeing what your eyes see with the naked eye in VR for the first time.
Yeah, let's introduce this visual Turing test concept to people who aren't aware. Meta's teams, Mark Zuckerberg has spoken about this idea of passing the visual Turing test. So the Turing test was something that Alan Turing came up with in the 20th century for AI. And the idea would be that you have a conversation on a computer, and it could either be a human being on the other end or an AI. And if you can't tell the difference, the Turing test is passed. Okay? You literally can't tell the difference in a human and a computer. We have already, arguably with the right fine-tuning with LLMs, passed the Turing test for AI. The visual Turing test is you can't tell if what you're looking at through a headset is real or virtual. The analogy that I like to make here to really score a point, how would you actually do this as a test, is that you would somehow like blindfold someone and put on safety goggles on their head. And then you would also blindfold them again and put on a XR headset that had the same form factor as safety goggles. So you would pick ones that are similar. And if you couldn't tell whether what was put on your head was safety goggles, literally just transparent to the real world, or a headset, then the visual Turing test is passed. So this is the goal. We're nowhere near there today. Tiramisu is a massive step towards showing what that could look like. And I think it's so funny that sometimes we talk about all this far off future tech, and then we come back and talk about the mundane thing of like Quest 3 seals in the last quarter or something like that. There is no world in which it would not be an appealing mass market product if you could have the field of view of Boba with the image quality of Tiramisu. I think people would sit in a headset like that. If you could somehow combine, if you had a Boba Masu, they would sit in a headset like that just because it's pleasant to be in, seeing this virtual world of whatever kind you want, combine this with where AI is going, and you can generate your own virtual world in a second from a prompt and interact with it. The point here, to not go all over the place with hype, is that there is a huge gap between the VR of today and where it will be. And people that think the hardware is good enough, the hardware is finished, the hardware is mature, you are so wrong. There is so far to go here. The difference between putting on that Quest 3 beside Tiramisu and Tiramisu from visual quality, night and day doesn't even come close. It's like the difference between being blind and seeing. We are at the very early days of consumer VR. This is the giant computers on your desk in the 1980s with the monochrome monitors, CRT, to playing 200 lines of text. There is so far to go here, folks, and we are going to get headsets that deliver wide field of view, immersive, detailed, hyper-realistic worlds. And it's going to happen slowly. It's not going to happen overnight. But if you're here with us at UploadVR and you're following us in this VR download, we will be here with you to chart this very slow but very real progression towards virtual reality that you can barely dream of today.
David and I both read The Verge. We love The Verge. They do great work at The Verge. But what David just said, I know what he's referring to. He wasn't calling them out, but there was a single line in The Verge's review of Apple Vision Pro that suggested that perhaps the whole thing was a dead end. That implied that this is the best it will ever get. And it was so poorly framed. Everyone in this audience, a lot of people in this audience, noticed the same line in The Verge's breakdown. What David is pointing out here, and I love the commenter sort of keying in on your enthusiasm here, right? These are people who have watched you for months or even years now, and know that the way you're speaking about this actually carries weight. Just because of what you're saying, right? So people who are maybe newer or haven't really watched us for that long, David doesn't talk about every headset demo this way. Go back and find our coverage of the visor. Go compare David's coverage of the visor from Immersed to his coverage of this research headset. And you can compare night and day the difference of his tone, of the quality of what he's seeing, and not just that, the potential for us all to reap these benefits in the future.
Yeah, it's really exciting stuff. And this is not just empty hype. I'm saying this because I've just come back from seeing it with my own eyes. There are brilliant people working on this. They are being funded with millions, if not billions of dollars over time to deliver this. And I just want to keep that in perspective, that we're early today. And yes, even the headsets of today can be amazing, right? Compared to what we had 10 years ago, the idea that we have wireless standalone 2K per eye headsets with room scale tracking with no markers or base stations, hand tracking, mixed reality, body tracking, amazing. But we've got so far to go. And I think there are a few commenters that are really kind of echoing this. LL is saying that they see on Reddit this take, the hardware is good enough, it's all lack of games. And the LL says it's laughable, and I agree, it is laughable. Like, that's not to say that software is perfect. There's so far for software to go. I see some people asking about the games cast. We have some plans to announce at some point in the future. We don't want to get specific yet, but we do want to talk about the software too. But the hardware is also a massive limitation. It's got so far to go. I can't wait till the day that we come onto the show with gray avatars or gray codec avatars and tell you that the visual Turing test has been passed.
Yeah, David, we do. Like, if you think about that, think about what that means about the people that you're watching right now. We really do believe that one day a researcher is going to invite one of us or both of us to a demo where we will do a test very similar to what he just described, right? And when that happens, we will fulfill that line from the science fiction that we saw. I want to get back, I want to talk with our audience a little bit about the change to society that's going to come when these headsets reach these densities, right? Like, I think that's what's getting across a little bit in this conversation of just never taking it off, the prospect of never taking it off. It becomes more feasible when the weight is lost and when what you see. There's a line I quote, it's quoted on my Blue Sky, I quoted on my Twitter for a longest time, but Ken Perlin at NYU saying that what happens when what you see is actually larger than what you can see with the unaided eye. That's what happens when you can see things that aren't available to you with the naked eye. And that's the course of this century, is we see that becoming a real capability for humans to have. And if you follow from that, right? If you follow, maybe we're wrong, right? Maybe we're wrong. Maybe that doesn't happen. But if it does, you better prepare your family and friends for what's coming. That's kind of how I approach our coverage, how this team thinks about reporting on the future a little bit. But it's sort of like we're going to have real serious discussions about what does school look like when it's this resolution and it fulfills all of those visual cues. How many hours a day should a kid spend with a superset of unaided vision, right? Of better than unaided vision. Like, do they want to take the headset off when they finish school, or are they stuck in it? What does addiction look like at that scale is valid. It's real questions. And I don't know if they've got to build the time machines and then actually test it to find out.
Yeah, these are very interesting questions that we're going to keep charting, and Ian will definitely keep holding to account and tracking the societal changes here. I'm going to have to cut off here. This is my hard cut off. It is now 10 p.m. in the United Kingdom. I am horrendously jet lagged and still really fucking warm because somehow even at 10 it's not. Again, these buildings
Let me
are
thank
all
you,
designed
David.
to trap heat, and it's great in the winter. And it sucks in the summer.
No, we're at 20. And you said it at the beginning of the show. It was designed to capture the heat of the 20th century. Holy shit. What kind of a podcast are you listening to? That's the kind of conversations we have. Please become a patron or a member at UploadVR.com. This is the story of our time, and we've been covering it. Thank you to David for transporting yourself across the earth to see this headset, and thank you to the researchers for bringing it to SIGGRAPH. We hope to see the next one, and we'll see you in the future.
Yeah, I definitely also want to echo that. Thanks so much to the Meta researchers in Meta for letting us try this out. To be clear, we went there at our own expense. They didn't fly us over or anything like that. We went there because we wanted to go see it, and we're grateful that they showed it there. A lot of other people tried it there, and I plan to talk to some of those other people in coming days and see what they thought as well. Thanks so much, everyone.
Get some rest.
Please read our articles at UploadVR.com, where we go into much more coherent detail. Thanks again. We will see you next week, and we will see you in the future.